Hello everyone and welcome back to What a Barb, a Polin podcast. I'm Obs and today I'm kind of joined by everyone, but in the first instance we have Lecky Merrick and lovely Beans. You've popped into the intro to say hello both. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Yeah, okay. I'm doing okay.
Beans, we only have you for the intro because you weren't with us when we were recording this episode. So in the actual rewatch, we'll have Veg with us and no Beans. Mm-hmm. But Beans, how is life going? You have finally moved in. How are you doing, babe?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I still have a bunch of things I need to get. I need to get a dresser. I need to get a desk and a bunch of other organizational shit that's going on. But it's fine. You know, I enjoy living by myself.
I thought you were just going to stop at I enjoy living. That's always good news.
I enjoy living again. Yeah, today is my dad's birthday. R.I.P. He died over 10 years ago.
I'm so sorry, Beans. I didn't mean to laugh at that.
Oh, Lord. We've talked about it before. I think we recorded another day on my dad's birthday. I mentioned this last year, I believe, but every year on his birthday, we watch National Treasure because that was his favorite movie.
One of my favorite movies. So good. Highly approve.
Yes. If you want to really get in there, his favorite television show was 24. If you want to spend the entire day watching that. And then we would get Chinese food because he loved American Chinese food. And he got it so much that they knew my dad's phone number off the top of their head. Yeah, so that's what we do. And also we do a 7 and 7, which is a type of whiskey, and then Sprite, which is god awful, but we do it because that was my dad's favorite drink. So, here's children.
I raise my Colin bench mug to your dad.
I raise my bowl of cereal to my dad.
Lecky, participate.
Okay, I've got some Diet Coke.
Amazing.
How is Biscuit settling in to your new apartment?
So, she definitely gets bored, but that's also because I'm still waiting for, all of her toys and stuff like that. She will come to me at 5 a.m. in the morning to play, and I'm like, it's 5 a.m. I do not want to wake up. So instead, I turn on cat TV, and she watches squirrels on the TV for about 2 hours before I finally wake up. And then she really likes this one window in my bedroom, and she'll just sit and lay in the window because the sun will hit it in just the right way. And then she just found out that she can hunt the fake mice that I get her, so she'll walk around carrying the toy mice by the tails around the house, so that's fun.
Cute.
She's been adjusting pretty well.
You're still settling in.
We'll get there.
Lecky, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I don't know if I have any other news except for, existential dread, so...
Lecky is fine and filled with dread.
Yeah.
My husband made a really delicious potato and leek soup last night.
Oh, that sounds delicious. I'm going to put that on my grocery list.
There's your bacon with beans. Well, I'm glad to hear you're both doing well, and Veg is doing well as well.
Well, how are you?
Yeah, how are you, Obs?
I'm all right. We're just plodding on through. I'm just waiting for later in the year.
Not sick?
Me? Unwell? No. I'm trying to pretend that I'm well because it's embarrassing to always be ill, but I'm very overworked at the moment and run down, so we're just trying to get through. Well, we will be getting to our rewatch very soon, but Bean, seeing as though you're not here for the actual episode, we thought we'd touch base with you, a little 303, because it's one of your favourites. I don't know if it is actually, I might have just made that up. 302 is one of your favourites. Do you like 303?
Yeah, I think this episode is my favorite Colin episode. I'm gonna be honest.
Yes. Yeah, it has great moments for him.
And I know he's in despair for most of it, but the looks.
He does it so well though. It's not our fault.
The looks are so good. The yearning is so good.
How do you feel about the balloon sequence?
Well, that's the hottest I think Colin has ever looked.
I love that that's the conclusion. Well, he looks amazing.
So hot. But I love a man that yearns. So the entire episode, just seeing him basically on his hands and knees because he's desperate. I like that we get to know Debling more. I think his character is fun. I understand a lot of people didn't like the triangle, but he wasn't your typical triangle man, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't overly brooding or because Colin was doing that. He was still sort of nerdy. He wasn't your typical, it was very obvious that he wasn't really made for Pen.
Yeah.
because he wasn't this like overly romantic, like bending over backwards, what you normally see in love triangles. And I think it was like a different take on it. Like Colin was very clearly her match, and it was like the actual person she's ending up with is the right person, like in the triangle, and it's so very clear that Devling is not the man for her, which I like the take on that dynamic.
Because it's not a love triangle in which you have a character torn between emotions. It's a triangle where someone is torn between following their heart and following their head.
Exactly.
And that creates such a different dynamic, because what that is, then becomes more about who Penelope is as a person, as opposed to, does she like this guy or does she like this guy? It's about who you are and what you believe in.
Yeah.
And then I think Colin learns a lot through that experience as well. So it isn't which guy she's going to end up with. Like you say, it's very clear who is right and wrong, because we know her character and we know what being truthful to herself looks like. So yeah, I totally agree. It's interesting in the way that they play with it. And we'll talk about it more in episode 4, which you will be with us for.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't be in the episode, we've put a couple of questions aside for you just to get more Bean's thoughts. So one question we did answer was Moon Pie asked us about the Bleen sequence, which is like a big set piece. It's very unique to this episode. And they were wondering, what alternative non-balloon event would you have liked to see instead? Is there like a set piece or a location?
Sky's the limit.
It'd be fun if they did like a World's Fair.
Yeah, I love the idea of a World's Fair. They have a World's Fair in North and South.
And that would be so Colin-coded.
Yeah, a World's Fair would be cool.
Yeah.
I think they should incorporate that into future seasons. I don't know who else they would do it for, but a World's Fair would be so much fun. Because it would also then go along with the Innovations Ball, right? Because it's all about innovating.
Yeah, tie in.
I also would have gone along with Devling, because I'm sure they had scientist displays and stuff like that, like the Royal Geographical Society or something probably had something to do with the World's Fair.
David Attenborough in a corner.
I looked it up and it says the first one was in 1851, but they could stretch the timeline. Just shove it earlier.
They could stretch it.
Do we care about historical accuracy? This is not what this is about. And then we've got a couple more questions for you from Scribble Vinyl. In the last 2 seasons, we see Violet pushing Anthony to look for his match. Why don't you think she's done the same with Colin or Benedict until now?
I think that she hasn't really pushed Benedict because I think she already knows that Benedict's kind of like a lost cause in terms of...
You're going to have to phrase that, Bennett, babe. We don't think Benedict is a lost cause. I think you mean she knows her efforts would be a lost cause because he's not in that headspace.
Yeah, let me rephrase this. I want everybody to know I initially loved Benedict when I was first watching Bridgerton, and I still do. I also have taken quizzes and gotten him.
You're definitely more Ben.
Yeah. I think the thing is like Anthony was so much like he kind of had to keep up appearances, and the Bridgertons actually care quite a lot about what society says, and if Anthony is still running around, it sets this precedent for the family. And I also think that Violet saw that Anthony needed to have his own family to focus on and to stop focusing so much on his brothers and sisters so much, because it was just becoming a detriment to his own personal happiness. Like he was using those things as an excuse.
His responsibilities, yeah.
Yeah, he was dealing with his responsibilities to push aside grief that he'd never actually gotten a chance to truly feel. So I think for Violet, she was like, 1, propriety in society, and 2, I think you need to give yourself a chance to let go, and love is the ultimate challenge of not being in control, right? Like true love with a healthy partner is this understanding that you're not always going to have control in every situation and allowing yourself to give into that a little bit. So I think that's why. And then with Colin, he's just so young. And I know that Violet got married fairly young, but I think, you know, she kind of sees, like, I really think she does sort of see Colin still as like a baby and like figuring himself out. Like Colin's given this chance to be, you know, he can be a kid. He doesn't have a lot of these like same limitations or like responsibilities. So I think that's why she's never really pushed him. And also it could have been too like a reflection of what happened with Anthony. She pushed Anthony so hard and she realized how much it backfired.
Eloise too.
Yeah, and she was like, maybe I need to step aside a little bit.
I think the Marina situation plays a huge role in that as well, because in season 1, he was like fully into that and she was so not on board with it. Not only was he too young, but she knew it wasn't the right situation. So he kind of jumped the gun on that before she could even, even have a conversation. And I think she was just so glad that he went away traveling and wasn't focusing on doing something like that she's like, yeah, take your time.
Right. I think after that, Violet probably knew beforehand that Colin had feelings towards Penelope, right? Like, she probably saw the way that he looked at her, or how he spoke to her, or whatever, and maybe she had hopes for that. However, after the Marina situation, with that context included, she maybe also thought how much he was hurt by this situation. So
yeah, and it took him such a long time to get back to a sort of level playing field within himself. Because even in 106, she was like, you're so serious. And so just getting him back to that playful, charming self is kind of the goal. And then lastly, to skip right ahead to the end of the episode, those key moments at the Innovations Ball. What do you think Penelope's reaction would have been had Colin been able to confess? Or say whatever he was going to say at the end of the ball.
Literally get any word out.
Yeah, instead of just staring at her lips.
Can I say something mildly controversial? I don't think it's that controversial. I don't think he ever was going to confess at the Innovations Ball. I don't think he was going to be like, oh, I love you all of a sudden. I think he still needed time to figure out those feelings and to really feel that desperation. I think that he was just going to ask her if she was serious about Debling. Like, oh, are you serious about him? Whatever. And maybe try to talk to her or something. I think also potentially gauge, and he's not going to ask about Debling to be like, okay, I need to give up now. He's going to ask to gauge her feelings, because I think what he's looking for is like a break in her voice, or
is there even a chance?
Yeah, a chance, or like maybe she doesn't sound certain of herself, because he knows how Penelope sounds when she's certain of the things that she says. So I wonder if that was going to be sort of more of what he was doing, and then he chickened out because Devlin came up and she immediately went to like dance with him, and then he was like, well, damn it.
That's a really good point, because the last time he really approaches her at the Innovations Fair in the sweets tent, he's talking to her about, well, she's bringing up Debling and how Debling has shown an interest in her, and he's obviously very miserable and visibly upset by that, but he doesn't say anything. Right. So it's interesting that if he chickened out, and instead of asking if she had feelings for him, it's possible that he would have chickened out in a different way and instead asked her, kind of got her temperature on the Debling situation to see where that was going, to see if he still had hope. Because we talk about this in the episode, but there's this big issue of Colin doesn't know that Penelope returns his feelings, so he might have gauged her temperature in a way. He may have said something like, oh, you know, how is it going with Debling? Do you think he would be a good match for you? And maybe could have like hampered himself that way, because of course she would say things seem to be going well.
I think he would have just gone up and been like, he was so frazzled that he was just like, that kiss, huh? Like, that's all that was on his mind. And I like what you say, Beans, where it's like he wasn't in any position to even form those words, and he still doesn't understand what he's thinking and how to put it into words. So I don't think he was ever going to be capable of speech, because to me, episode 3 is about Colin's paralysis and episode 4 is about Colin's actions.
Yeah.
And I think you couldn't have had the action at the end of episode 3 because he just wasn't there. What's interesting is that if you think about it, so you had the innovations moment where he doesn't speak. The next time they speak to each other is at the Queen's Ball. That's so strange.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in episode 4, because I have thoughts about that sort of
journey.
The fact that they never circle back with each other until then. Thank you so much, Beans, for your insights. Profound as ever. Do you want to stick around while we do the crumbs?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, Lecky, what have you got for us this week?
First up, we are of course eagerly awaiting the arrival of the Bridgerton Season of Love event taking place on February 14th. Beans and Ovs have talked a lot about the event in our most recent Weekly Crumb episode, but the countdown really is on now, and fans are very happily guessing what information might be released at the event. Definitely an interview with Jess, Yaren, and Luke, hopefully a still or two. Who knows? We will see.
I'll be at work, but
I think I'll take one for the team. I'll be on Instagram stories, live tweeting, you know what I mean.
What do you think we're going to get? Still? Clip?
I don't know. It's so bold.
As Polin fans, we're like, we expect nothing.
Can't imagine. Because we had such a tumultuous journey.
Yeah, I think we might just get a still, if anything. Or they just might do like the thing that they did at Tudum where they read part of the script and then they painted.
Oh, yeah, I'm more painting. You know what? Painting would be in theme.
I still don't get how that wasn't Benedict's game. I reckon it'll be similar to Tudum 2021. I think they'll have the panel. I think there'll be a few stills, so you'll get some stills of the new characters that have entered the ton, and then like maybe one of Elle and Fran. If there's a clip, I'd be surprised, but I could see them having a little bit from the Masquerade Ball. So it's already kind of been spoiled, so I don't think the season's going to come out until next year, so I think they need to pace themselves with what they release.
Yeah. And I also, like I said, I think in the last one, I think when we do get a clip, it's going to be a very random clip of Benedict, or it's going to be a clip of Penelope and Colin, because that's just what they do.
Well, I think the first clip is always the couple, and then later on they release other clips, I think.
I was thinking maybe a clip of Benedict right as he notices Sophie, but you don't see her.
Oh, that'd be torture.
Like the lead up to the moment.
Because you want to see love at first sight.
Maybe, but I think that would be like too much at first, you know?
But you would just see the gaze, but not Sophie. Save that moment, maybe. But moving on, Nicola was interviewed by Gold Derby in recognition of her SAG nomination for her portrayal of Penelope in season 3. It was a really fascinating interview, and it was really great to hear Nicola's insights, especially on Penelope's complicated relationship with Lady Whistledown. Very excitingly, Nicola also looked ahead to season 4, confirming that Penelope is now firmly known as Penelope Bridgerton on set, and she's very much in the family now. It's very sweet. She's graduated to Bridgerton status. She also teased that season 4 has a totally different energy and that she has a super cute baby who is Nicola's doppelganger. She said, "When I saw the baby, I was like, that looks so like me. It's crazy. We get on well." I'm glad.
The ginger jeans coming in strong there.
A little baby.
I just we get on well. Yeah. In a little bit of season 4 speculation, it seems that director Jafar Mahmood will be taking the reins on episodes 2 and 4. This has not yet been confirmed, so please take it with a massive pinch of salt, but it does appear that season 4 filming is working a little differently this time around, whereby the episodes are being split between directors in a different way. In seasons 2 and 3, for example, each director took one block of episodes, for example, episodes 1 and 2, 3 and 4, etc. So it will be interesting to hear more about the process that they're using in season 4 once we get some more behind the scenes and interviews. Looking back to season 3, Variety announced that Bridgerton was the most streamed original series of 2024 with over 21 billion viewing minutes.
Oh, that's crazy.
We know who are responsible for most of them.
And we know the timestamps. But what's your most rewatched moment of the season? What do you go back to?
Oh. Well, I rewatched episode 1 the most, but if there's one scene, The Garden Apology. It's my favorite.
Oh, yeah, that's nice. Episode 1's good. I think, like I said, 3 just because I love the brooding of it all.
Yeah.
And then maybe the kiss from episode 2.
Yes, that's another one. I'll watch the first kiss and then roll into the dream sequence. We've talked about that. It's just perfection.
Carry on, Lucky.
Bridgerton have also announced a collaboration with Hallmark comprising of Bridgerton-themed gifts, including a Lady Whistledown trinket dish, socks, throws, and tumblers. Polin fans, you'll all be thrilled to know that silhouettes of season 1 Pen and Colin do make an appearance in the merch alongside Lady Danbury and the Queen, and of course Newton. You can presumably catch the collection in Hallmark stores. However, I did go to a nearby Hallmark store to try to find the collection, and they were going out of business, so they didn't have any of it. But I did find a swan ornament. It was like a swan boat ornament. If you've been listening to our podcast for a long time, you'll know that when we initially got the first few stills of the Innovations Fair, we thought potentially there might be a swan boat involved because there was a massive fucking giant swan, which we will also discuss this episode.
Justice for the swan.
Yeah, so they had a swan boat ornament and it was 90% off, so I got it for 60 cents and it's perfect. Claudia Jesse's upcoming project, Toxic Town, will be premiering later this month. It's based on a true story of one of the UK's worst environmental scandals, and the show will be released on Netflix on February 27th.
You know, it's very serious. That sounds like something I would love to watch.
Moving on, Luke Thompson will be joining the production of An Oak Tree at the Junvik in May. Described as a theatrical experience like no other, the play will see actor Tim Crouch be joined each night by one surprise guest. This means that Luke will be one of the surprise cast members. It will be impossible to know exactly which date he will be performing, so good luck, anyone who goes to see it. What's interesting about this is that it confirms that season 4 will definitely be wrapped up by May. To be honest, we were expecting April anyway, so this kind of ties into how we think production is going.
Not long to go now.
Yeah, that went by fast.
Everything in season 4 has gone very fast, and I tell you now, if you weren't around during season 3 production, It was not like this.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It's gone by fast, but also at the same time, like, besides from what we get from the crumbs, I feel like I've heard nothing about it. There haven't been many leaks.
There haven't been many crumbs.
Lucky and I were talking about this the other day to ourselves because, there's been not many leaks.
They're filming on set now.
It's because they have the set, but I think because of the nature of the story, I don't know that there's going to be that many balls either. If you think about, like, the two of their worlds meeting, you're not really going to have Sophie
Dances.
attending balls beyond the masquerade. So I think the whole shift is going to be so different. And the spaces that we spend time in will be far more domesticated than opulent, which is what we had in season 3, which is probably why season 3 went so hard into those set pieces at the balls so we could pivot.
You know what would be a cute solution to that? Because I'm assuming they'll have a big ball at the beginning, the masquerade, and then they'll probably have a ball where they dance at the end after they become, officially a couple and she's recognized as a Bridgerton. But it'd be really cute if there's a moment after she works at a certain household where she may or may not run into Benedict.
A redacted household. Beans caviar for Virginias.
If maybe the children of the household who have not yet debuted need dancing lessons, and Benedict is forced to take part and he decides to partner with Sophie.
That's adorable.
It'd be a really quiet little intimate dance because she's trying to fight her feelings for him and he is very aggressively pursuing her.
Context clues have given me the answer that you were just trying to hide, so...
Lucky you didn't do a good job covering that over the paper.
I'm assuming she works for the Bridgertons.
Actually, we don't know who she works for, so she could work for the Mondriches, which actually would be really interesting because from some of the cutscenes from season 3, the Mondriches were really interested in helping elevate others in society. So,
I knew that was a guess that you guys were saying. I'm assuming in the book she works for the Bridgertons.
Yeah, okay, but there's a lot of Bridgertons.
Okay.
That's true.
Which Bridgerton? And they're in different households these days.
Yes, Violet lives somewhere else.
Oh, right, Lucky.
Interesting.
She knew that.
I don't know that she did.
I didn't know that.
We did cover that in the book.
Oh.
Penelope and Colin have to walk over to the new house.
We've slept since then, Leck.
I don't remember that.
Carry on.
Oh, Lord. Sorry, listeners. Yarenha's upcoming show, The Survivor, will form part of Netflix's 2025 Australian offering. I don't think we have an exact release date yet, but we do know it's a crime drama, so keep an eye out for that. Yaren also attended the Vanity Fair EE BAFTA Rising Star party along with Katie Leung, Michelle Mao, Isabella Wei, and Florence Hunt. Elsewhere, Luke Newton and Emma Naomi attended the Boss David Beckham party last week, and a new trailer for Jurassic World has been released, which means we have an opportunity to whip out our Jonathan Bailey dinosaur collage that Beans made for me. Thank you, Beans. Misdirected, an Audible original narrated by Nicola Coughlan, has now been released. And finally, congratulations are in order to Chris Bowers, whose original score for The Wild Robot has been nominated for an Academy Award. We know that there are a lot of big award shows coming up over the next few weeks for the cast and crew, so best of luck to everyone. I'm sure we can all agree how deserved these nominations are.
Thank you, Lucky. So, all eyes on next week. Let's go, guys. We will have thoughts, I'm sure. But until then, goodbye, Beans.
Bye.
Past us, take it away. If you had a little bloop there, that was Beans heading off. Thanks for joining us, Beans.
We love you, Beans.
We're also about to jet off to see some balloons. But before we do, we're going to find Cressida and Eloise on a promenade. What are they up to, Lecky?
Cressida explains why she wants Debling as a husband. He's not just good-natured, but most importantly would be her choice. Now, there are some obvious parallels between Penelope and Cressida's arcs the entire season, but they are especially glaring in this episode. And in this scene, Cressida is emphasizing how important it is for her to have a say in the man that she wants to marry. This very much reminds me of Pen's own plan to find a husband that suits her needs. The cutscene where Cressida enlists Eloise as a matchmaker makes the comparisons between the two women even more apparent. And later this episode, Penelope, as we know, ends up wearing rhinestones around her eyes, which the hair and makeup team has told us is because she's looking for a husband and trying to attract suitors. We see something similar with Cressida with her giant sleeves at the Innovations Ball, where she's using her costuming to draw attention to herself. All in all, I think Cressida is such an interesting foil for Penelope, and the comparisons that the writers draw between them this season are so intriguing. And I just adore the writers and Jess's nuanced portrayal, taking this character everyone pretty much hated and making her sympathetic and three-dimensional. And as Penelope's sisters become acquainted with some chamber pots, it's time for us to become acquainted with our new Lord and Savior, the balloon, a symbol now forever associated with Polin. Thank you, Bridgerton writers.
Who bloody knew, honestly?
Yeah. Love it though. Obsessed.
Yep, It's time to finally fly away to the Hawkins Fair to see the extraordinary novelty, the Hawkins balloon. But for a giant balloon, we need a giant space. Veg, where are we heading?
So we are off to Pensive Park, which is a location that has often been used by the show as a standard for Hyde Park and the Serpentine. Also Rotten Row, and now the scene of the Hawkins Fair. So we had a lot of good history during the crumbs gathering time. There was a random passerby who just walked past the set.
Yeah, I think it was like the crew struck up a conversation with him and just were really open about the fact that they were filming Bridgerton.
The humble dog walker can uncover many a secret.
Yeah.
So we didn't see a big balloon because it turns out it was mostly CGI, but we could see all the sets and the tents and everything set up, which we spent a long time analysing the colours of the tents because we thought, Polin, where's the Polin in this?
I had many collages.
She did. Yeah.
Comparing and contrasting the shade of gold with like Colin's bedroom curtains.
Colin's coat. Yeah, his coat even, and there's brown. Yeah.
We did not have much to do back then.
Yeah. Do you know what? Sometimes we're dead on with the colours and sometimes there's nothing at all.
It could have been deliberate.
I think that the pastels are very Polin coded.
Yeah, it definitely, it fit the theme.
The color of the wooden barrels were very similar to the shade of his brown pirate coat. I will give you that.
We are early on in the wilderness weeks now, but give it 8 months' time and you'll see what becomes of you all.
Oh, blimey. Right. Anyway, on a lighter note, we thought this maybe could be an outdoor ball or some kind of fantastical dream or other scene like heightened in Colin's head. But we will hear more about that from Lecky later. And fun little tidbit, the crew actually nicknamed Pensive as Painful because it was such a difficult shoot.
I remember at the time, like you say, you could see from these photos that there were those colourful tents set up, but there was also this little platform in the middle, which, as it turns out, is where the balloon would be. But we couldn't quite see that because it was CGI.
Yeah.
Wasn't there.
Therefore, it wasn't there. There was a giant balloon basket, which Lecky will come on to later, but we constructed out of thin air this idea that it was an outdoor ball, kind of like the Daphne Dream ball.
Yeah.
We weren't miles away.
No.
We've been far wronger than this. And we already know that the balloon has been the talk of the ton and has already claimed one victim in the shape of Gregory's dodgy arm. But as to who it will claim as its next victim, got any leads, Lek?
Well, Penelope has just arrived, walking through the entrance like a sacrificial lamb. She's with the rest of her family, but is very closely followed by a whole bunch of Bridgertons. I really love this shot of Pen and Colin arriving at the fair as their family share a frame together with Penelope's carriage in the background. But what's most conspicuous about this shot is that they are also sharing the frame with a, quote, ginger child, according to Obs. Basically, a young boy with ginger hair.
Because I'm the resident redhead. Therefore can only identify them.
No, because I remember when we were first watching this, in all caps, you like typed ginger child or something like that. You were the first to point out the ginger child. But this immediately caught Obs' attention the first time we watched the season, and then I kind of caught on later. But the last time we saw Polin posed with the ginger child, as you may remember, was way back during the What a Barb scene in episode 104, so we thought this might be deliberate.
Full circle moment. We saw that when we were watching episode 3, and the second I saw his little ginger head, I was like, oh, they're having the firstborn son. We already kind of knew that.
Yeah.
The stars had aligned.
Yeah. Heavy foreshadowing.
At that point, when there's like Colin, Pen, and then Portia walks past this ginger child, I was like, well, ginger child aside, how are they both looking, Veg?
Well, Pen is wearing a seafoam green structured dress with silver detailing, which is sort of like a sunflower burst wave pattern. Very natural, which is quite apt because she spends the rest of the sequence trying to impress Debbling and convince him that she likes the natural world, which I'm not a big fan of, but I'm sure I'll have a little rant later about that. And although her heart is with Colin, she's very unfortunately for Polin fans playing to Debbling with her wardrobe. The dress is covered also, however, in sweet little bows on her sleeves, bodice and hem, which are very earlier Pen, but they are kind of more grown up and I would say a more attractive use of bows than back in the earlier seasons.
It's been the year of the bow.
And there's also an argument that the dress could be a nod to the balloon, and if you kind of squint and turn your head, you can kind of see it. Her hair definitely has a cute little nod in it to the subject of the fair. There are some hints to the balloon in all of the costuming and styling, which Kat Quinn shared on her Instagram. She shared some insights that she got from John Glazer about this look from Pen. So the little colourful colourful pearly spheres in her head are meant to mimic the balloon itself. And it doesn't stop at Pen. The whole ton has literally got balloon fever. And you can see that other characters like Philippa and other extras with like circle patterns on their clothes and puffier sleeves. And this was on purpose to emulate the balloon mania of the time, which was actually quite accurate. And around this sort of time in real life, balloons were like the big thing. And some fashions literally did grow out of balloon mania. So there were some fashions which actually were inspired by balloons that grew into just being normal fashions.
Interesting.
So cute. And of course, no Pen outfit would be complete without her signature fingerless gloves, which are perfect for licking icing off your fingers when the occasion arrives.
Who knows?
I also think her reticule is hysterical because it's see-through and it looks like there's a rock inside of it. It looks like she is carrying around an emotional support rock. Now that her dream of Colin has hit rock bottom, she carries around a pet rock as a reminder.
We're all just getting through.
Actually, in truth, it is a little coin purse that you can see her whip out in the sweets tent, but I'm just going to argue that it's a rock-shaped coin purse because the idea of her carrying around a little emotional support rock in her see-through purse amuses me.
And although this dress is new for the Hawkins Fair, she will go on to have her own reduce, reuse, recycle moment later in episode 8. So we'll see this dress again, forever a sustainable queen.
As an aside, I also find it hilarious that the carnival barker guy also has hot air balloons all over his waistcoat, kind of tying into the balloon mania.
Oh yeah, there you go.
It's kind of on the nose, but I guess what you see is what you get. In fact, in the pattern, it's not even just a hot air balloon, but there's like people looking up at a hot air balloon, because when it turns to the shot of him on the side, you could see like the people looking up at the balloon. So it's very much what's happening around him.
That's very meta.
Well, yeah, if this is the first balloon, how the hell did they create the fabric?
I don't know.
What came first, the chicken or the egg? The waistcoat or the balloon?
I think it's the first balloon to society, but there's probably been whisperings of balloons for a while.
Yeah. He's probably been on tour. Hawkins started over in France or whatever, now that the war is over, and has made his way back to England.
It's on the ship after Colin.
Yeah.
Well, there's some more balloon history to come, guys.
Stay tuned.
Just you wait.
Until then, how's our dear Colin looking?
Colin is wearing a truly iconic outfit, one of the best of the season, fan favourite, and he is back in his pirate coat, which is paired with a brown and blue striped waistcoat with gold buttons. And I don't know about you guys, but I think it has like quite good steampunky vibes, which is very perfect for this event. We have been told that the pass of the waistcoat is going down in an arrow pointing to his crotch, which is described by Dougie Hawkes, the assistant costume designer, as the happy place.
Pointing to the goods.
To Colin's happy place, which is like really horny. This whole season is quite horny, so it tracks. And Colin's shirt underneath is the same colour as the blue stripes, which goes so well. And I love a bit of colour matching. And the shirt has arms which allow themselves to be rolled up. And as we ladies know, seeing a man's forearms is peak female gaze attractiveness. Paired with the Fiero tight high-waisted trousers and boots, Jonathan Bailey. In my opinion, this is his sexiest look. I don't know about you guys.
I think I agree.
You're not going to see us complaining.
I think Pirate Colin walked so Balloon Colin could run toward the balloon, is what I always say.
My heart will always love Pirate Colin, though.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have Mirror Colin, who is a version of this. They're all in the running.
But I still like Balloon Colin better. You've got the windswept curls. It just...
The curl. Oh, my God. Like the hottest. It's Balloon Colin. He's tugging a rope. I don't know what more we want.
Tugging a rope, yeah. Just what we all love.
However, can we just take a moment because, dear friends, please gather to lay to rest our beloved pirate coat, which sees its final outing here.
It's a blow. It's a blow.
Crisis.
And what a note it goes out on, because when he goes to pull the balloon, he literally just throws it to one side.
Gone.
No, right. That poor coat.
That's the last we see of it.
Editor's note, actually, if you look closely in this scene, as Colin is running toward the balloon, there is a suspiciously brown-colored object back in the toy vendor's tent. I was convinced this was Colin's coat and was proven correct when I looked up some behind-the-scenes footage uploaded by Shondaland of the sequence being filmed. You can actually see Lord Stanton in behind-the-scenes footage placing Colin's coat down in the toy vendor's stall before dashing to Colin's aid. So that's where it went, at least at first. Who knows where it is now?
We can only assume that like an opportunistic Tons person wasted no time snapping that up.
Probably Lord Wilding.
Oh yeah. So, pirate coat in all your tattered, soiled glory, we will miss you.
I am of the opinion that Ray pocketed that coat because she's been paid well by now. And she knows like my future Lord and Master
Yeah, she knows.
Colin Bridgerton is going to want to keep this coat. So I think, yeah, maybe she's in the background there and she nabbed the coat.
Oh, she's already working.
Yeah, it's already in the closet. She takes it back to the closet at Featherington House, just waiting for Colin to earn his place there.
Work for the job you want, not the job you have.
It does get upgraded with like the dark coat that he wears when he's really stressed and storming through.
Is that upgraded?
Yeah, that one's good too, but
It's no pirate coat.
I just can't abide it being completely discarded. I want to know it's tucked away somewhere for the future.
I love how prepped he is for the balloon scene. I'm so cynical. I'm like, why on earth in story on a blustery day were you got your thing out with no cravat, your arms already up?
Yeah.
He was raring to go. Colin aside, we will mourn our pirate Colin later. More importantly though, how is the balloon looking?
Oh, well, it's the balloon's world and we are all living in it. So our majestic idol, the balloon, is sporting a lovely blue and yellow look, which initially we were like, well, it's Polin.
Still is.
It's cute. It's the pollen colours and super apt. Ovs and I are the grateful owners of tins with the yellow and blue balloon on.
We've stood in front of this bloody balloon.
Yeah. And many people more dedicated than me put in the work, however, and found out that there was a very similar balloon from the 18th century, which this one seems to have been inspired by, which is also blue and yellow. And my apologies to all of our francophonic listeners, but I've been encouraged to try and accent for this portion.
Take it away.
Alors, the Montgolfier Brothers balloon was the first air balloon presented to the public and flew 2 kilometers in its first flight in 1783, which is 1783. And what's interesting about this balloon is that the symbols are the sun, the face of King Louis XVI, and his royal monogram. And this was but a few years before the French Revolution of the 1790s, where the very same King Louis was executed by guillotine. I wonder if the creators of the 1815 balloon in London were royalists.
Well, she's there, so they better be.
Yeah, so apologies.
Apologies to France.
I'm sorry, France. You have a beautiful country. So the base of the balloon is probably inspired by a different balloon, which was created later that very summer. This was the summer of balloons by inventor César Charles, who, as his name implies, I believe was also French. And this was a hydrogen balloon like the one in this episode, rather than the fire hot air balloon one. There's two different types.
They're different balloons.
Yeah. Engineers, chime in.
I posted on like a balloon subreddit once when things were coming out and I was very quickly corrected that it wasn't a hot air balloon.
Oh, yeah, so this later in the summer balloon had a similar boat-like basket. And when it landed on its Virgin voyage, it was attacked by local villagers.
Much like Colin Bridgerton on his Virgin voyage.
Sorry, that's hilarious.
Anyway, as we alluded to earlier, in this episode, the balloon itself is actually CGI. And John McLaren, the visual effects supervisor, shared that in building the balloon, we went through creating essentially a cloth simulation of the balloon and how it would be affected by the wind. To achieve the realism, we had to reference a lot of balloon crashes,
God,
as well as takings off, to see how the balloon reacts to gusts of wind and then translate that digitally to simulate the look of our balloon, which I think is super cool, just to get that little insight.
balloon science. Yeah. Well, Pen's here, Colin's here, the giant yellow and blue balloon's here. All the ingredients we need for a true scene of chaos. But Pen looks like she's got other things on her mind. So what's going on, Lecky?
As you can see, Pen is seemingly distracted, as if she's busy looking for something. Devastatingly for us, that something or someone is in fact Debling, not Colin. The script for this moment reads, angle on Penelope looking around for Debling. Instead, she spots Colin in the distance. You win some, you lose some, I guess.
Colin, babe, you're not having a good episode. But what is Colin up to? Well, he's got his eyes on the balloon. I remember this still was released before season 3 came out. And the second I saw his gaze looking up at the balloon, which we didn't even know the balloon was there for sure, but I clocked him. I knew there was going to be a balloon v pirate showdown on the horizon. He's also walking with Benedict, but the very second Colin spots Penelope, he continues his seasons-long tradition of blowing people off at a moment's notice, just because Penelope Featherington happens to breathe in his immediate vicinity.
It's adorable how Pen looks back at Colin, but she misses the moment that he also also looks toward her. Very rom-com. But then as Penelope steps toward the tent, she turns back to gesture for him to join her in Miss Plaskett's sweet treats tent, which Colin, of course, does notice.
Yeah, because she's near the fucking sweets.
A combination of Pen and sweet treats. It's no wonder he immediately ditches Benedict and dashes off to join her. In fact, the script notes that he brightens at her nodding to him, which is very sweet, quite literally.
Poor Ben, he's so used to this by now, just immediately accepts being left in the dust. I suppose it's good practice for season 4.
As Colin joins Penelope in the sweets tent, she tells him to pretend to be loitering for sweets, which presumably Colin has spent most of his life doing. However, if you remember from our 302 rewatch, there was a cut exchange between Polin right at the beginning of the market scene, where Colin told Pen to pretend to be shopping for silver. The script clarifies this dialogue from Pen here is a callback to that moment in 302. However, this time, Pen is the one being careful about being seen in public together, and Colin's not sure if he likes it, as he files in line behind her.
See, I get why it was cut out of 302, and I like that it was cut out of 302 because I think in 302, if he'd said, pretend that we're not together, it shows too much awareness on his part, and I think it's better if it's only Penelope who's really aware of the impact them being seen together has. However, I do really like the idea that this would have like flipped that moment, because you can tell when it happens, he's kind of like, what the hell is happening here?
Yeah.
And it just adds this whole episode of him being completely like set back every time he's trying to get his finger on the pulse of what's happening between them. This part of their relationship has switched as well.
Yeah, that's why it's kind of nice to see the scripts where even if they cut out these moments for like the betterment of the story, for the most part, it's nice to see these little like instances where we get more insight into the characters and how he's supposed to feel in that moment, and how, like you said, this is supposed to be a moment where there's like a realization happening where he's like, oh, I don't really like this dynamic that we had before, especially now that it's kind of turned against me.
And the tent scene, of course, is undoubtedly a fan favourite, and I do have a real soft spot for it too. What I like is, as they're making their way through the tent, they're both facing ahead as they walk. So you've got Pen leading the way and speaking to him from over her shoulder, and that this means that Pen really has no idea how Colin is reacting to anything she's saying, because she's in her own little, oh, things are going great for the first time in ever, and he's like dying behind her every time she's like, great news, and he's like, fuck. So she's completely oblivious as to how intensely he is watching her, because there are these moments where he's just staring straight at her really intensely.
Yeah.
And how uneasy he is hearing everything that she's saying about Debling.
So Colin asks how she is doing, but is strangely pained to hear she is doing so well, according to the script, as she tells him about Debling.
I thought you wanted to help her, Colin.
He is clearly still reeling from how affected he is by their kiss and how unaffected she seems to be.
And I'm forever amused / a bit heartbroken by Colin's little, look that way it stole a house, didn't it? Because he clearly wants her to be happy. He's in such turmoil. Because he's like, I literally said to you under the tree that I wanted nothing more than your happiness. However, not with this guy.
Yeah.
Where the fuck am I in this equation?
Yeah.
Oh, bless him.
Well, actually, good news, Colin. Pen is the most buoyant and hopeful we've seen her in a long while, and it's all thanks to Colin's lessons.
Well done. And as Pen praises his lessons, I love it. He can't help himself. That little praise kink just bubbles its way up.
Praise King.
And his head snaps towards her, and he smiles as Pen tells him how his lessons have helped her stop feeling so low and stop caring about how she's perceived. She says that she was able to simply be herself, which is such a lovely nod to Book Pen, who often thought about how Colin's presence gave her the same kind of confidence.
As Pen moves through the tent, Colin trots along after her, clearly not quite getting the memo about keeping a deniable distance. He stands right behind her as he asks if she feels attachment to Debling, to which she says it's early, but more good news. Debling seems to have strength of character and isn't unpleasant to gaze upon.
How fortuitous. Colin grins in despair and gazes up around the tent, presumably, I don't know, looking for a place to crawl in and die at the news that apparently Pen has a thing for blondes with beards. This isn't a great time for a clean-shaven brunette.
Yes, as the script eloquently describes the moment, ouch, ouch. Meanwhile, Pen has grabbed herself a little cake, not at all noticing Colin's acute distress. But as Pen takes the cake in her hand, Colin also forgets his distress thanks to a handy little bit of powdered sugar, which Pen so thoroughly licks off her fingers and lips. As the script says, she puts the finger in her mouth, sucking off the sugar. As she does, Colin is transfixed, watching those lips he's kissed pucker around her thumb. Time fucking slows. Sound goes away. All that exists are her lips and that thumb, and how much he can't help but want his own mouth to be on hers again.
Just your mouth, Colin. Sure.
It's like,
Absolutely. Believe you there, babe.
Also, as Colin is reacting to Pen licking her fingers, the camera cuts back to Colin, and you can see that the frame is completely blurred around his face. Even the edges of his face are blurred, so that we can really focus on his expression and his lips as he reacts to her. Colin also licks his lips after Pen does, subconsciously mirroring her actions, as if he's trying to taste the memory of her on his own lips.
And you know that fuzziness? I think that ties back into the fuzziness that they used in the dream sequence.
In the dream.
Yeah, and it's showing that this dream and this kiss have really fucked him over. Every time he tries to look at her in this episode, he just can't have a conversation because he just looks at her lips.
Yeah. The fantasies are also kind of bleeding into his reality.
He's back in dreamland.
Yeah.
And I have to say, can we give it up for the actual cake symbolism of it all?
Cake symbolism.
How much time did we spend talking about the bloody cake symbolism in season 1 and season 2?
We've been redeemed.
And here we go.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we're just clowns and sometimes a mercy happens upon us.
There's some meaning to it, yeah.
I'm sure if you've listened to our episodes before, you're familiar with this, but just to recap, this connection between Polin and cake and sexuality has been threaded in the season through pretty much the beginning. So in episode 2 of season 1, you have the cake scene where Pen is asking about how babies are made and Marina says it's to do with cake. So there's like plants a seed for her, not that kind of seed. And then later in season 2, episode 6, we have the purpose scene where Pen and Colin are standing there looking at this cake representing their future marriage that's ahead of them. And Colin suggests that they nab a piece of cake and eat cake together. And then you have this in season 3 where Pen is eating a cake. It's all tied to do with sex, desire. We've come full circle. She's nabbed a piece of cake. Poor Colin is left to watch in the aftermath. And this moment is the first time in the scene that they've been face to face. So like we were saying, every time he actually has contact with her, looking at her, he just gets completely distracted.
Yeah.
That's what happens at the end of the episode too. So maybe he should have just followed her for the entire episode. They'd had a more productive conversation.
Tragically, Pen notices Colin staring and breaks the spell. She asks him to wish her luck, but is gone from the tent before a startled Colin can finish even saying the words.
Oh, he just left blinking after her.
And this is just another moment in a long string of confusing moments where Colin is left wondering about the state of their relationship. Yet again, Penelope has abandoned Colin after sharing an intimate moment with him. This is very much like the scene in 302 where they shared their first kiss, another moment of intimacy, and before Colin can even process the intimate moment that they shared and what it means, Penelope departs. Once again, he's left perplexed and alone. And it's necessary for us to see all these moments of inaction, to see the moment in 304 where Colin, when Penelope flees the ball, decides to finally chase after her, refusing to let her break that intimacy, becoming a man of action, refusing to let her go.
But Lecky, there was a tiny little cut moment here, wasn't there, from the original script?
Yes, just a brief little one, because the script describes how Colin is left speechless by Pen's departure, but is now at the front of the line to purchase a cake. So the cake vendor would have asked him sweets, to which we would have been left with Colin considering whether to buy one. We know Colin hasn't been able to eat, but maybe a little taste of cake is just what he needs to get his appetite back.
We will see. But as Colin mulls over whether or not he should nab a piece of cake, we're off back outside the tent to catch up with Cressida and Eloise.
Cressida has been doing a lot of research about the Great Auk, and so is hoping that Lord Debling wants to talk about birds rather than balloons. Interestingly, Cressida remarks that she found the bird charming, perhaps hinting that they would have been better suited than we initially thought. Debling and Cressida, I mean, not Cressida and the Great Auk. To her dismay, Lord Debling immediately brings up the subject of balloons. Probably hard to get balloons off the brain when there's a giant fucking balloon saddling nearby, but Cressida could have perhaps averted this crisis by drawing attention to another giant object in the vicinity, the giant wicker swan.
The giant wicker swan. Yeah, you've heard it here. Firstly, though, I just want to say the line, "Have you ever ballooned before?" is an underrated gem. But secondly, this fucking giant swan. How far back we go. And if you're sat there being like, I don't recall seeing a giant swan. No, you didn't, did you? And we've got a bone to pick with you about this. Not you, personally, listeners. Because as Debling is busy explaining how far away from civilizations his travels will be taking him, the four of us are far more distracted, looking for our old friend, the giant swan.
The giant swan. Yeah. Long-time listeners and long-time Polin fans will know that swans have been associated with Polin for seasons, for years. Most notably with the feeding the ducks scene from 205, where Colin said that he was feeding the ducks only for the camera to hilariously pan over to a swan. And ever since then, it's been an in-joke with the fans where Colin can't tell the difference between a duck and a swan, which is representative of the fact that he couldn't see Pen, the swan, who was right in front of him the whole time.
Especially because Pen is a female swan.
Yes, Pen is the name for a female swan. It's adorbs.
It's just at this point we're like, her name means swan.
There's the ugly duckling symbolism.
Her name is Penelope, you know, the Grecian wife. We need to start doing some thinking at some point. And he's doing it now and I'm happy for him.
Yeah, it all fit.
Yeah.
Either that was the purpose or they made it the purpose after Polin fans really ran with it because it swans on the cake at the wedding.
Mm-hmm. Right at the top.
But that's jumping ahead. So swans have appeared on the set decor throughout the show and fans, including us, obviously had a lot of expectation about swans in season 3. And you might remember a Crumbs episode we had called What a Giant Swan, where literally, as you can guess, that was pretty much the central point of the episode. And we discussed the filming leaks for this scene. And to cut a long story short, there were basically a few leaks from Pensive Park where we could see all the tents that we mentioned before and the platform the balloon would be based on. But did we notice the basket? We did not. We focused on this giant swan ornament in the middle of the set and we were like, okay, it's the swan ball. I'm pretty sure we said it a swan ball.
It was giant.
Yeah.
You can go back and listen to it. We're on record being like, there's a giant swan. Sorry for thinking that this would be in the scene.
Surely it's an important figure in the sequence, yeah.
The balloon basket, we literally didn't even...
Yeah, we didn't see that.
No. We were just convinced that this swan would be the pivotal point of the episode. And then it was like barely visible. I didn't see it on the first watch.
She's been edited out.
Most of the time it's blurry shot in the background. You can see behind Francesca, like the blurry swan in the background. And when like Colin is looking towards Penelope, you can see kind of the blurry outline of the swan just in the corner. But there's a couple clear shots of it.
It's like Mike Wazowski in Monsters, Inc., where every single shot there's like a sticker over his face.
Yeah.
Look, the fact of the matter is, we know that they had this giant swan custom made, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they definitely wanted a giant swan on set.
Yeah, so the swan was commissioned for the scene and was custom made by Coates English Willow, who had to weld the frame together and then weave the willow to create the swan.
So we know it's there and you can kind of see it in certain shots. So how is she looking, Veg?
Well, our giant willow swan is looking resplendent, even if she's a little absent. And Matt Godfrey of Coates English Willow said the main body of it was quite a simple thing to make. It's the wings, the head and the neck which were very awkward and very shapely. It's quite a good feeling to know that you've made something. I know it's a popular show. It's not really my cup of tea.
A humbling moment for everyone listening.
Oh, God. Little bamboozled guy who's been commissioned to make the swan. It doesn't even really show up in the episode. What's he thinking? What's he told the grandchildren at Christmas? Gosh.
I just can't imagine. I just can't imagine. Also, like, the production team was like, we have a vision for this sequence. It's all about balloons, but you know what? I really want a giant 5-foot wicker swan.
And it's huge.
And why did they commission this?
Please go commission a giant 5-foot swan.
It's hand welded and hand woven with willow.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how long that takes?
Well, the main body was quite a simple thing to make of. It's the wings.
That neck isn't easy. It's shapely.
Yeah.
She's a shapely woman.
Oh, yeah, the neck was very awkward and very shapely. What I want to know is where's the swan's life partner?
Colin, on the other side of the balloon. I think that's part of the reason why we see it when Penelope is standing next to Laura Deblaine or whatever, because, like, you know, she's the swan trying to find a partner. She's just, like, in the wrong direction.
And so is the camera.
Yeah. You can glimpse it a little bit. In the wide shots of the balloon, it's there. And as she's approaching Deblaine. Yeah, next time you watch this sequence, play Spot the Swan. See how many times you could see it in the background.
It was a short game.
I did it once, and I think we did like a sequence on our Instagram stories where I included every shot of the giant swan. There may be quite a few, but most of them are blurry.
So if you're as distraught as we are over the willow swan erasure, I mean, they literally made it out of willow. We've just been under a willow tree. You cannot tell me this is all not connected. Then worry not though, because there is a great behind the scenes shot of Nicola, Sam, Jess and Claudia all posing with the giant swan who is standing there in her resplendent glory. So she did get her moment in the light.
Well, kind of. The swan deserved a little more. Mm-hmm. But Nicola Coate of Coates English Willow shared with the BBC that a friend of mine said, "Have you seen this photo? It was a picture of the swan with the cast of Bridgerton, decorated with flowers and everything. And we thought, that's where it ended up. So all's well that ends well, I guess." R.I.P. Giant Willow Swan. You might have been overshadowed by the giant balloon, but you'll always be the true star of the Hawkins Fair. And now I guess it's just sitting in storage somewhere.
But sadly, back to Eloise and Debling. What's going on between this awkward little menage a trois? Well, everyone's favourite third wheel, Eloise, asks Debling why he wants to escape civilization, to which he replies, for the pursuit of natural beauty, but also to find a place where my family cannot possibly find me. Cressida is interested to know he doesn't fit in with his family, and he wishes to escape because this is kind of her perspective this season as we're learning more and more. And we had a question from one of our Patreon members, Cinebeast, who asked, do you think Cressida and Debling actually could have made a good match had Penelope not interfered? They have a brief moment of connection over their dislike of their families, but beyond that, I'm not really sure they would have been happy with each other. Who knows? Maybe in the long run, Penelope might have done Cressida a favour. It might be like the very, very, very long run at this point, because I don't know how her story's going to go.
Oh.
I think they would have made a good match, because I think they're both a lot more aware of what they're getting into and the expectations they have of each other, whereas for Pen, it's still going to always be tied up with this idea of wanting love, whereas I think Cressida is a lot more practical in what she is hoping for. Also, they did seem to have a genuine connection and a shared background that they could probably let themselves bond over if either of them were really truly ready to let their guards down. But again, I don't know if they did get married, they'd ever actually really allow themselves that, or if they just be like, this is a cool arrangement, it works for us, go find your orc. I think though, when we're talking about like a good match, I think it's important to remember the context, because love is an exception in the show, and we have that for our main characters, but it's very much not what you expect for other characters. And far too often young ladies would have had to marry unpleasant and mismatched men at the very best. Like a tolerable match is like, well, you know, you kind of get on-ish.
Yeah.
Or the alternative is an extremely unsafe and abusive match at worst, which is what Cressida is having to face later on in the season. So I think in the frame of their world, this warm and interested match, even if it's a little bit distant and not fueled by love, would have been a much better option for Cressida than what we see for her in this season. However, having said all that, I do think that everyone still deserves true love, and I think that involves Cressida and Debling. So I'd hope that in an ideal world, they'd both go and find their true loves. I don't think it's looking good for either of them.
Could grow into love.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that they could grow to love each other because, like, when Debling discusses how he doesn't get along with his family, it's not much to build from, but ships have sailed for much less. And I've always thought that Debling and Cressida had decent chemistry, starting specifically from this scene where Cressida starts to realize that Debling isn't just the best prospect, but could be a good companion for her, someone who understands the painful world that she comes from. And just the idea of two broken people from neglectful families coming together appeals to me. So I kind of hope that they do find a happy ending together.
Before Debling dies in the North Sea.
Yeah.
He takes a quick detour to Wales. And again, we were asked by our listener Scribble Vinyl, had Pen not been in the equation, do you think Cressida and Debling would have ended up together? Do you think it was on the cards for them?
I think they would have, yeah. Yeah. You can't help but feel sorry for Cressida in this episode because she forms a genuine connection and feels a kinship with Debling because, as we said, they're both from dysfunctional and perhaps cruel families. And then Pen, of course, basically drives him to leave the Ton in the next episode, long before he'd even planned to depart, probably, dashing Cressida's hopes of finding a husband that could have been an actual companion to her and that she could have had a meaningful relationship with.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, because when we were watching it, we were like, Pen, stop it, because obviously we know that Pen's going to end up with Colin.
Yeah.
So all of this damage is kind of for nothing.
Yeah.
Well, it's just how it goes sometimes, isn't it?
God.
What can we do?
It is what it is.
Cressida really has bad luck as well with picking them. She always picks someone who's got someone else.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we talk about how much more three-dimensional she is this season, but even in the first season with Daphne, she tells Daphne, like, you didn't have to pursue the prince that hard, you know, when you had this other connection.
Which, fair point.
You can't help but feel for her in these moments.
They seem to be finding common ground for now, so we'll just let them have the illusion of it. Lucky, where's our lovely pen at?
Well, Penelope is on the hunt for Debling, so how opportune that this is the moment she runs into him, taking this happy little trio up to a pretty uncomfortable quartet. The frame is cleverly set up here with Penelope's and our view blocked by two ladies, making it appear as though Debling is standing alone. As the ladies move, Pen is frustrated to see Eloise there with Debling, making her quickly attempt to ditch the mission. To everyone's joy, however, Debling spots her just in time and calls her over. Perfect.
and the four have a wonderful little chat about the Great Orc, near extinction, and mating for life. Debbling and Cressida seem to have another little moment together before Pen interjects with, "I love birds," and compares herself to a sparrow. I find this deeply offensive when we know full well that a massive swan is standing nearby. No, I will not give up on this. Completely ignored. She's like, "Oh, I'm a sparrow, perhaps." No, you're a swan, babe. Get in line. But do you know who else is standing nearby, getting completely ignored by Penelope?
Yes, Colin is paying very close attention to Pen and Debbling, pirate coat in arm, as he licks his own cake off his fingers. This is obviously Colin trying to taste Penelope again by eating the same cake that she was eating earlier in this sequence. And then he is joined by two of the Lord Squad, Lord Stanton and Wilding, who can't help but tease him over his role as a marriage whisperer, noting that he loves the fanciful. Stanton, you have no idea how much Colin is loving a fantasy these days.
But Colin shrugs him off, saying he's done with all that, and he says it's good to be back. The three turn to the balloon, which is ominously suddenly surrounded by workers. There's a gust of wind in the air, and sadly not the kind that blows a bonnet into a face. But before we all get swept away, let's see how things are going with our awkward little group of four.
Well, Eloise is definitely me in this scene. She's looking as if she'd rather be anywhere else rather than here. And like Elle, we are all forced to endure the awkward conversation with Pen and Cressida, both obviously competing for Debbling's attention. And I just have to say that the competition between Pen and Cressida just really annoys me. And on the rewatch I did for this recording, I just skipped it because it's not just that it kind of takes away from some of the story. Like, there's not much of a narrative thread that kind of evolves from it, really. And also, I just see it as like another opportunity to kind of embarrass Pen. Like, she gets all flustered and it's like, have we not suffered enough? Like, Pen has had her embarrassing moments. Now it's her time to shine and not be embarrassed. And I was just like, what's the point of this? Have we not suffered enough? Pen just keeps inserting herself into the conversation, and it's actually less successful than Cressida, as she insists that she much prefers the natural world to the unnatural one.
I know what you mean, Veg, because I remember we were told in advance that Cressida and Pen were going to be competing for the same guy. Like, that was revealed, and we're like, oh, that's such an interesting motivation for why Cressida will then turn against Penelope, and that will fuel the inevitable blackmail plot. But that just doesn't seem to happen. Like, that's never a motivation for Cressida. Even like announcing herself as Lady Whistledown never comes from trying to take it away from Pen. It's just like, oh, in the moment it works for me. So I kind of know what you mean, that in this approach to give Cressida a really sympathetic, nuanced portrayal, you don't want her to sort of hold on to this resentment to Pen and weaponize everything against her. But then it kind of makes this not really go anywhere.
Well, it's deeper than that. The animosity between Cressida and Penelope really isn't so much the focus as Cressida just wants a better life for herself. And she's the foil for Penelope, who is also searching for a better life for herself. I kind of like this scene because it's very, very rom-com. I always say that Nicola is channeling Bridget Jones in this scene. So I think that's the vibe that we're going for.
I love Eloise in this scene.
Yeah.
Because once again, she could just be like against Pen or whatever, but she's just suffering for every single person involved and just wants to be gone. Of course, Pen has her absolutely iconic line, "There is nothing I love more than grass." Oh, grass. Sorry, I should put on an accent, shouldn't I? Grass. Obviously, we find out that she hates grass, doesn't like grass, whatever. It's all right, isn't it? Except for Colin in 203. He loved a blade of grass.
I found myself meditating for hours upon a single blade of grass.
So maybe these two aren't as best matched as they like to make out they are. Also, just want to point out that the crew got really stressed on this shoot because Pen specifically says that she loves that grass is green and that the grass around them was completely dead because it had been a really dry summer. And they were like, shit. But yeah, it is painful. It's deliberately painful. I find this more bearable to watch than like the early flirting fails of episode 1. The more I watch it, the more I understand where the blame was coming from. Anything to make this conversation end? I'm down with it.
Once again, we find Colin unable to tear his gaze away from Penelope and Debbling, although he's now looking a little more windswept. He inquires whether Debbling is odd, clearly fishing for reasons to add to his extremely comprehensive list of reasons Debbling isn't right for Pen, which we'll hear the full extent of in 304. Good work, Colin.
Veg, can I ask you a personal question?
Of course.
They drag him for his untoward love of vegetables. Now, as someone whose username on Reddit is literally Veggies Bay,
And has a tattoo of vegetable.
carrot if you're interested, how does that accusation sit with you? It's a rough season for you.
I'm sick and tired of the horrible campaign against people who like vegetables. But I will stay strong.
But tragically, Colin is reminded that Devlin can be as odd as he likes because he's fucking loaded.
Classic.
Bad time to be a thirdborn, I guess. Although he is Bridgerton, so he's also loaded, just a reminder. But enough worrying about finances. Colin, put those staffing issues well out of your mind, my love, because there's a near-death experience whipping itself into a frenzy. The wind is suddenly throwing the balloon around, which quickly draws the expert eye of our dear traveller. This is by the by, although I think quite important to our listeners. He looks great in that shot where he's looking at the balloon.
Yep. No notes.
So I was actually, little story, on an escalator in Farringdon Station going down to the Elizabeth line, and there was a woman on the step below me who was watching this scene. And I saw her like clicking the like forward 10 seconds button to specifically get to the shot of Colin brooding and standing there. And I was like, this is absolutely amazing. It was so great to just see it in the wild. Yeah, we've got to make our commutes easier somehow, haven't we?
And as the wind picks up, we catch a glimpse of a stall where toys are being sold. And in a blink and miss it moment, you can see what looks like a boy about to fall off of a rocking horse. I know this is a massive stretch, but Ovs connected a green ribbon to Polin last episode.
She's always ready to bring that out, isn't she? Oh, I'm so sorry that on our Polin-based podcast with 60-odd episodes, I find a green ribbon interesting. Carry on about your little toys. Go on, don't let me stop you.
We'll call attention to this in a collage or something. But also the entire stall is filled with horses in even what looks like a little ship. So this entire sequence is just screaming pollen symbolism from the horses and the swan, etc.
And talk about forces of nature. I mean, obviously this is a big scene for them here, but that's literally how they met. A gust of wind. So it's all coming back around. Nature is really trying its best here, but you can only go so far.
Oh my God. Sometimes I feel like such an idiot, but I did not make the connection between the gust of wind with them meeting and the gust of wind here.
To be fair, I don't think the show did either.
Okay.
That's us. But it is like a notable thing.
Yeah.
They could have if Penelope was holding a shawl or something and it flew off and it blocked somebody's eyesight and they let go of like one of the things holding the balloon, triggering the sequence or something.
Well, ready to take flight, anyone? Because the wind is picking up, the leaves are rustling, and a certain Prudence are about to be swept away by their passions. Prudence is dressed up in fursel of lilac, quite literally wearing her heart on her sleeve, as she finally starts to fall for her husband. The cutouts that she's wearing even look like little hearts. It's so sweet. And her husband is quite literally falling to the ground, kickstarting a catastrophic-ish chain of actions that will send us flying centimetres into the sky. The pegs come loose, the balloon basket makes a violent break for freedom, ready to mildly decimate all 5'1" redheads in its path. We are soaring towards disaster, but thankfully there is one man who can save the day.
Colin notices that Penelope isn't paying attention to the balloon and somehow guesses it's going to travel horizontally in her direction rather than upward, but I digress.
Traveller's eye.
Hero Colin, this is the moment you have been waiting for. We've often discussed Colin's hero complex, but finally, on this blustery, near-deadly day, Hero Colin can finally jump into action. Spotting Penelope mere feet away from the balloon's path of devastation, Colin ditches one of his truest loves, the beloved pirate coat, as he tries to save his other love.
Farewell.
Can we just have a moment of silence? Like he'll do some sort of
Dirge.
And there he goes, never to be seen again.
Walk with the angels, pirate coat.
Fly high with Archie and Edmund, and who else is dead in the show?
I don't know.
Soon to be John. Is anyone else dead?
Do you think Pen will also miss the coat more than she misses her dad?
Yeah, probably. I would.
The coat's off. The coat is gone. We have Colin racing through the crowds, grabbing a rope, screaming, "Help me, now!" to the Lord Squad. The emotional support curl is supporting this action like you wouldn't believe. It's just flying around doing its little thing. This, I have to say, is all excellence. I need Luke Newton in a pirate movie now. Do you remember how much time we spent being like, what's Colin's hobby going to be? He needs a hobby. It was boxing. It was fencing.
Tugging ropes.
In so many ways, in so many places. And I'm happy for this to be his hobby. He learnt the ropes on the ship. He's brought it back home. It's what he was made for. Hero Colin, we salute you.
The nearby men jump to help as Hero Colin, with his sleeves pre-rolled for the event, sets them to work. Eloise notices what's going on and decides to save Cressida, not Penelope. Not a great look there for you, Elle. Helpfully, Devlin also ditches Penelope. True sitter you've got, Pen. You want to stick to that one, Penelope. Penelope turns to face her very own inflatable Grim Reaper, but is unable to move thanks to the distracting sight of Colin Bridgerton's forearms. We've all been there, Pen.
Is there anything quite like Colin Bridgerton yelling, "Heave," and tugging on some ropes to save the love of his life? I ask the crowds. and I hear nothing but silence. It's a surreal experience, to be sure. We will get into the balloon of it all. We're in the midst of it, and poor Ben in particular is really struggling this whole sequence, which is the real sign that this was not the season for you, my love.
Mm-hmm. And a bonus costuming point, which people may have heard, but Luke Thompson's trousers split 3 times during the filming of this scene. So I guess more energy like that in season 4 would be great.
Boy needs to get in a lake. He's already booked and busy. And it's a brutal battle between man and balloon as the basket comes crashing towards Penelope, soaring menacingly towards her at a speed that would surely outrun even the fastest of all snails. Penelope has only minutes left to move away from its deadly path, compounded by the disaster of her falling to the floor, terrified by the knowledge that if the basket reaches her, it will easily glide over her altogether. Mercifully, Colin's sturdy arms wrangle the basket to a stop, and Debling finally decides that letting your prospective bride be mildly crushed to death isn't the best courting gift on the market, and Penelope, in the arms of the wrong man, is saved. She lives to gossip another day. Everyone say, thank you, Colin's arms.
Thank you, Colin's arms.
We'll make it sound better in the edit. We'll do it 1, 2, 3. Thank you,
Colin's arms.
No, it has to be like a school thing. It's like, good morning, Mrs. Blah, blah.
I see.
Oh, okay.
You ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Colin's arms. It's terrible.
That was perfect.
Okay, we'll move on.
We might just include all of our attempts there. You just have to suffer through them.
With the crisis averted, Hawkins jumps in and decides to head up and away from the scene of disaster, leaving a shaken Penelope and a breathless Colin and an applauding crowd to come back down to earth from their brush with the heavens. My, what a day. And what a stunt. Leggy, tell me more.
Well, the idea for the balloon came from the writing team, who knew that this innovation was popular at the time. Jess Brunel noted that the team knew they needed a moment of thirst between Colin and Pen, similar to Antony's lake moment in season 2, but heightened even more for the new season, and so the balloon stunt was born. As you can imagine, it was a pretty huge setup for the cast and crew to pull off. Andrew Ahn said it was a very cool sequence. We storyboarded that. Every shot was planned. We had 3 cameras. We were at the location for more than a week, just trying to make this feel special, make it feel exciting, have Colin be a hero, and have Pen caught in between Colin and Lord Debling. The danger is a lot of fun to do. He also said that everyone did their own stunts, and while the basket was real, the balloon itself was VFX, which created a really complicated setup which required 6 balloon meetings. Oh, and just to add, we knew that Nicola was part of this stunt because in one of the the interviews they did, there was like a shot from like the costuming team's storyboards or whatever, and they had like different pieces of the dresses she wears, I think in this episode, and there was the balloon dress, and then there was like a stunt balloon dress.
So we knew that Pen was involved.
Yeah.
We will talk in a minute about how we thought she was involved, but she was, you can't deny it.
Yeah, as was Sam Phillips, who plays Debling, who said that the balloon stunt didn't go exactly to plan because he had a lot of trouble swooping in to save Penelope. He said that most of the time I looked like I was getting her in a wrestling headlock. We had to do it 6 or 7 times, maybe more. I was just surprised at how unsmooth I looked, basically.
Sam Phillips, I'm just going to say, maybe there was a few fumbled attempts. The final edit, flawless.
It was pretty good. Yeah.
I think it's great. It's so satisfying. It's like, whew, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Comes out of nowhere. And Nicola also said that the stunt was bigger than it was originally planned to be. So she said that originally the balloon came in Penelope's direction and Lord Debling was going to whisk her away. But then they were like, no, we're going to make this a full stunt. I was like, you're kidding me.
And they were like, yeah.
And we had to head off and do full stunt rehearsals for it. I had to like throw myself onto a crash mat. Sam Phillips fully rugby tackled me. Like at one point he went in so hardcore that his coat stuck to my wig and we were attached to one another.
Imagine Colin's face at that.
Yeah.
So we get a daring rescue, we get a little moment for hero Colin to shine, a near-death experience for Pen. This is all canon. We needed a near-death experience. I suppose she also fainted, didn't she? What do we all think of the balloon sequence? We've been on a journey with the balloon sequence, haven't we? I remember when we heard that there was a balloon sequence, it was my fault. I think I created out of literally nothing an entire narrative.
I don't think it was your fault. I think anyone would have assumed that the balloon would go up and not horizontal.
Well, it's just because the context, right? We knew Colin was going to have a hero moment. Like, that was obviously going to happen.
Right.
We had this balloon and we had a still of Gregory's injured arm. And we also had the bow and arrow that Gregory had.
Yep.
I thought that Gregory was somehow going to get into the balloon, like messing around with was Hyacinth, that the balloon was going to come loose. It was going to start to float away. Pen was going to jump in and save Gregory because, you know, she doesn't want Gregory to die, I assume. And then that was going to motivate Colin to save both of them. And it was going to be like this really like cool moment. And Pen is like staring after him because she's like, that's the father of my child. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Just this whole like really high stakes where she almost was going to die.
Yeah, I think I find this sequence very funny in retrospect, but I do still think it was a missed opportunity to not have one of the actual Bridgerton characters we know that we know well go up in the balloon, because as you said, we'd speculated that Gregory might have gotten trapped in the balloon and maybe even injured his arm that way, which makes kind of more sense than him hurting his arm by falling off the roof, for example. We also thought it would be hilarious and dramatic if one of the characters somehow got swept away by the balloon, even temporarily. Because there are many references to Eros and Psyche throughout the season, this also could have been another area where they could have incorporated more parallels, as in the original myth, Psyche is carried away by the west wind and taken to Eros's home. So this could have been a sequence where the writers gave Colin a hero moment and still had Penelope perhaps getting into danger because she was distracted by him, while also utilizing the balloon a bit better. Maybe Penelope could have been almost carried away and Colin went with her and successfully landed the balloon, giving them another brief moment.
Can you imagine?
Before, as we see in the show, he's mobbed by the debutantes or something.
I would have loved that. You know, I would have done. The final version that we got, I think I took a long time of it where I didn't really get it, but now I think it's really funny and really camp and everything like that.
Oh, yes.
But I just feel like there's a few missing beats.
Yeah.
That had there been a couple more moments,
Yes.
that it would have made the sequence kind of hit a little bit better for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially like lingering moments between Pen and Colin.
They tell Nick in the behind the scenes video to wait longer before she turns around and like notices the balloon. So it makes it like less weird that she does wait so long. And, you know, she's horny for Colin, which is great. It's the horniness that slowed her down. It would have been good to see a moment between Pen and Colin, but she was busy thirsting and we shouldn't expect her to move quickly in those conditions.
And in the script, it did make it clear that Pen was lusting after Colin, and this is what sort of paralysed her. It says, Debbling and Pen turn to see what's up, but when Pen turns, all she sees is Colin, his forearm muscles rippling as he tugs the rope, and she's frozen. So I just feel like that, having been made a little bit clearer, would have added to the narrative of the scene. I also wish that there was a beat after Colin had saved Pen. We see in the scene that there's the whole thing with Cressida and like Debbling is checking on Pen and everything like that, and there's this big distance between the two of them. He didn't have to go up to her, but like a more established moment. And I wanted that to propel him going into the Innovations Ball. Either he saw Pen with Debbling and was like really uncomfortable or really jealous, or he didn't have the chance to check that she was safe, and so he was really frustrated by that.
That's it for me. I think I wanted a moment where Colin, after he snaps out of the danger of it all, he realizes that Penelope is in close proximity to Debbling, whereas in the edit we got, Debbling almost immediately leaves with Cressida, and I kind of wanted a moment where Colin realizes that Penelope is even closer to Debbling after he saved her life, basically. But in the original script, there actually is a cut exchange between Debbling and Pen after the balloon debacle. So basically, Lord Debbling asks if she's okay, and Pen says, yes, thank you. But as she says these words, the script specifies that Pen's not looking at Debbling, but right back at Colin, the two of them having a moment as her heart does backflips for his heroics, and then sinks as debutantes crowd around him, blocking him from her view. Editor's note, fun fact, you can actually see this little moment I mentioned between Nick and Sam in the same behind-the-scenes Shondaland video that I mentioned earlier. We will link it in our show notes and try to include a collage. Generally speaking, the balloon is interesting in that it not only represents Polin symbolically, a combination of the Featherington yellow and the Bridgerton blue, but in this scene, Penelope attempts to turn away from it, literally a giant floating monument of her feelings, only to be drawn back toward it by forces of nature, forces out of her control.
And that's totally the whole theme of the episode, as we've seen right from the beginning with Colin and his dream and Pen fighting against what she wants. It's this push and pull, and I think I'd have just wanted that little pull moment a bit more, but it's such a busy scene and there's a lot going on that I think maybe just hitting all those points was quite difficult. We did have a couple of questions from our listeners about the balloon sequence. Tracy asked, I really want to love episode 3, but it's just the whole balloon of it. I can't with the balloon. So my question is, how would you rewrite that scene to make it better? And I think it's those kind of moments that we just said, where if we like had to keep the existing framework and like not change the whole setup. It's just a couple of moments, just allowing a few more seconds to breathe. Even like a couple of seconds can have like a really big impact narratively. And then another of our listeners, Moonpie, asked, the one element of episode 3 that doesn't quite work for me is the whole balloon sequence. Everything, the Sweets Tent, Benedict storyline. Oh yeah, we didn't cover that. Sorry, Benedict. And what's his other name?
Lord Tamadani.
Yeah, he's there as well.
We talked about him in the context of the Swan, which is the only thing really important anyway. So
look, we're a Polin podcast. This is a Polin rewatch.
Anyway.
The one element of episode 3 that doesn't quite work for me is the whole balloon sequence. Everything, the Sweets Tent, Benedict storyline, feels tonally off from the rest of the series. So my question is, what alternative non-ball event would you have liked to see instead? Maybe an ice cream social, a community bonfire, a theatre outing, paper lanterns. Oh, I'd love that.
Aww.
Or have you come to love the balloon for its campy charm?
Yeah, definitely come to love the campiness.
I really like the setup for the sequence, the whole fair in general. So I would have stayed here in this location, but maybe had the scene play out a little differently. Like imagine if there was no balloon, if there was still a fair. There's so many interesting tents and stuff in the background that I kind of wish we'd seen in more detail. There's like Humphrey's Confections. There's like a Punch and Judy puppet tent. Mystic Matilda, the psychic. Those are all existing set pieces that would have worked perfectly for a longer sequence if they kind of explored those in closer detail. In addition to the toy vendor, we also glimpse some of the other offerings at the fair, as I just mentioned. And I have to say, I'm so bummed that we didn't get to see more of the psychic in particular. It would have been so funny to me if a psychic flagged Polin down and forced them to undergo like a reading together, I thought. Or if like Penelope was getting a reading and Colin, the stalker he is, was lurking in the background. So the psychic ushered him over, forcing them to be in close quarters again as she's making thinly veiled remarks about their connection and feelings for each other or something like that. Obviously, something like this would have caused momentum to stall a bit since we already see them visiting the cake vendor, but I would have enjoyed it.
Yeah, I would have loved that. I think, as you say, there are so many set pieces that work. I think the reason it maybe tonally feels a bit unusual is that they've never had this kind of stunt, but we've definitely had sort of outdoor fates or little pieces like that.
Picture this. Giant swan.
Oh, I'm there. I've pictured.
Pen and Debley get in the giant swan.
Right?
The giant swan is bobbing along the field. I don't know. The innovation is that it can move.
Or in the little pond.
Yeah, towards the lake, but it's not meant to be. It's a ground-only swan. Colin hops in a duck boat and is following them.
Yeah.
Then they get into the lake. The swan can't hold the water because it's made of willow. The swan starts sinking. In jumps Colin. I appreciate that would be a third Bridgerton brother getting into a lake.
Yeah. But at that point, it's tradition after it's 3.
At that point, yeah. Just let it happen. There you go.
And just think, pen in a lake, the fabric is going to cling. Eyes are going to wander.
Yeah.
Sorry, wait. If Colin saved Penelope, would Deblin have tried to save the swan?
Oh. Yeah, it's perfect.
Or he would have capsized it because they'd been bobbing along and he'd like looked out and seen like a rare bird.
Yeah.
Yeah, but look, it's the great crested coot.
Well, that I would also take. I also would have liked for it to be a bit more fantastical, like we originally thought from the leaks. However, if I was to have a new location for season 3, I really wanted us to go to someone's country estate for the weekend.
Yeah.
Kind of like Aubrey Hall in season 2. Because this sounds a bit weird. I kind of felt a little bit claustrophobic in season 3 by being like very much in the ton, and a lot of it was like indoors and quite dark. And I just remembered being like, oh, I just want to like get outside and breathe.
I think we discussed this in the lead up to season 3, but something I really wanted to see was the Featherington country home.
Yeah.
Because this season is about the Featheringtons, and it would be so interesting to see what their country estate looked like, especially because we know that they've had money troubles and stuff. And in the past, I've speculated like when Portia had guests over, it'd be really funny if she had like servants in the background moving around like candelabras because they only had like a few of them to like, you know, keep up appearances.
Oh, like the Pride and Prejudice movie where
Yeah.
they're like, oh my God, everyone. And then they're all like perfectly positioned.
Yeah, but in general, it would be more interesting to see what her life was like when she's not in the ton and the life she had to endure. Because, like, you know, Lady Whistledown and life in the city was kind of her outlet, and it's a place where she can be free. So it'd be interesting if she was in the country, kind of surrounded by open land, but still felt claustrophobic, as you said, just because of, you know, being trapped there with her mother. And I guess alone even after Prudence got married. So it would have been interesting to see what her life was like there.
Well, that's what Eloise said in episode 1, like you hid out in the country all summer. And what does that look like? And why is the ton so important for Pen? Why is being in that world important, and why therefore is Debbling the wrong option to be hidden away again?
Yeah.
I remember during Crumbs we wondered if we were going to go to see Debbling's home, his home estate, and you know what, I don't think it would have worked with the Debbling that we actually get on screen because he's a bit more removed from society, but
Yeah.
I thought it'd been interesting for, say, the Ton goes for a weekend away at Debbling's estate, and then Pen is in the space that she would have to live in.
That's massive, but cold.
It's massive and cavernous, and Colin is seeing it like, I can't offer you this, and she is seeing it as, oh my god, this is going to be a mistake.
It's not the warm space that I associate with the Bridgertons, the
Yeah.
life that I kind of wanted for myself. It's cold and like more clinical and empty.
And it's the person, not the place, that matters. And so that when you then have Colin showing Pen their little apartment and their little world,
Yeah.
it's like everything she wants.
The contrast, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, we've gone on a journey with the balloon. I have a necklace that I bought in honour. I couldn't look at the necklace for a little while. Now I embrace it.
Yeah.
And who would have thought it, guys? And now every time I see balloon, I take a photo of it and send it to these guys every time.
As we said, it is now one of the big Polin symbols. So
It's just funny, isn't it? It's just laugh.
Yeah.
Well, Colin is the hero of the day and gets swarmed by ladies praising how strong he is. But being praised as a hero actually isn't all it's cracked up to be, as he and a very exhausted emotional support girl gaze over at Pen, unable to fully reach her. And bloody hell, what a day, eh? I really feel for poor Pen, who she finally gets home. She's like, what a shit time that was. Changes into a nightdress and plops back onto her bed.
A gorgeous nightgown and robe.
yeah, she looks stunning.
It's very floaty, ethereal, and it kind of looks like what she's wearing in the dream sequence, with like a ribbon around her middle that could be slipped open.
But there's no rest for the wicked, Penelope, because we're heading off to the Innovations Ball. First of all, we've got a little song cover here, Cheap Thrills by Sia. Lecky, it's...
Close but no cigar.
Yeah, we wanted Chandelier. It's
Yeah.
It's in the same realm.
It's in this wheelhouse.
What are we thinking?
I don't get it.
I just think everyone's kind of on it with this episode, like with this ball. Like everyone's getting hooked up left, right, and centre.
I suppose.
I've got used to it because I have the vinyl now. I like to play it. It's like da-da-da-da-da-da. It's just in my brain. I think it sets like an interesting tone for the ball. And this is one of my favourite balls as well. And talking of balls, where are we?
So, is this in the north ofs?
No, it's Lincolnshire, so drop the accent.
Oh, sorry. No, we're
It's
above
in the
the Watford
Midlands.
Gap. We're in the north.
Don't
we're not,
start.
we're not.
Drop the accent
Oh, no,
immediately,
sorry.
mate.
I can't drop it. It's in me now. Okay, so we are at a brand new location for season 3. Ooh, Grimsthorpe Castle. I think I was thinking of Grimsby.
Yeah, Grimsby's
In Lincolnshire.
Grimsthorpe Castle is not Grimsby, believe me.
Right. Sorry. Grimsthorpe Castle. A very appropriate name considering how grim Colin gets to become over the course of this ball. And production really wanted to find a location that matched Hawkins' eccentric personality to provide the perfect setting for the equally eccentric Innovations Ball. And Andrew Arn said that the location's mix of Tudor and Baroque styles created a harsher, more modern aesthetic that predated the Regency but still felt period appropriate. I like it. It's cool. It's like shadowy. Lots of like little corners.
Yeah, we used to call it the Archer's Ball, didn't we?
Yeah.
And Andrew added that the style and theming of location also inspired the costuming choices for the cast, which allows them to have more fun and play in costuming, showing how characters could have fun for the night. So this is almost like what was that sex party vibes ball, the scandalous ball in
What?
season 1.
Oh, the Trowbridge.
There's no sex party.
That's like what?
Thank you.
The Trowbridge Ball.
There's no sex party. They're like the hot one.
Well, when Benedict's around, you never know, do you?
Yeah, so I guess this is the equivalent. And Tony Hood, the Bridgerton location manager, also told House Beautiful that they had to bring in changes that weren't typical of a Regency house because they reasoned that Hawkins would have gone for something a little bit strange. And side note, what a great job just walking around grand homes for your job, spotting which would work well for Bridgerton.
Location manager.
And that's so cool because you're going with like the character in mind and being like, where would a really eccentric inventor live?
Yeah, that'd be fun.
And then it works so well because it is this sort of austere, dark, slightly eccentric space. So it works really well.
It's great.
Target locked.
And the Bridgerton carriage has just rocked up at the ball and out steps Colin, Eloise, Violet, Francesca and Benedict. I have to say, it's a bit of a tight squeeze in one carriage, but Elle is still worried that Colin is upset with her, but he assures her, no, Eloise, we are well.
Cute.
But he is simply in his own thoughts. What about, exactly? Well, a man can be pensive, can he not? Emphasis on the pen there, Colin. Because Elle, believe me, babe, you really don't want to know what's going on in his head. But how is our pensive man looking vegetable?
Well, Colin is in a dark choice of ruffled shirt and jacket with only a hint of silver on the waistcoat underneath. And perhaps this is sort of a hint to the morning of all his hopes and dreams of a life with Pen. He also wears a devastating emotional expression throughout and even sports some tears at the end of the scene. Lovely. You're never fully dressed without a cry.
Aww.
That's my motto.
I really like this look, to be honest. I think it's one of his best. I think the dark colours really work. Also, I have to say, I love that he's still wearing his boots at the ball. He's so stoically committed to the boots. But like everyone else, if you look, has got like dress shoes on. He's like, the coat's gone, the boots are staying.
They made of leather, they're fine.
Yeah, there's a behind the scenes of him sitting with Nicola and they're in chairs in like the middle of the ballroom and his like boots are very much on display.
It looks good, and you know they're going to be centre stage in episode 5. And as Eloise and Colin head off together, Violet drops her glove, which is heroically retrieved by, dun dun dun, Lord Marcus Anderson. Guys, we've got a Vicus meet cute. How do we feel? We will talk about Vicus as we go, but first impressions? I remember thinking it was taking a really long time for Marcus to show up. And I was like, where the hell is he?
Yeah.
It's sweet. I came around to Vicus. I really did.
I was never really off or on them. It's just like, yeah, sure, go ahead.
I think it's cute how they kind of created like a little nod to Benedict's book in the way that they find each other with her dropping her glove and him finding it. And that's their moment of connection, because later in the season we see that moment between Fran and Michaela, which kind of is mirroring how Violet met Edmund. So I like this moment where Violet is meeting her new love in a way that mirrors the way that one of her children will also find love in the next season.
What about with Colin and that random girl in episode 1?
Yeah. Missed connection.
I thought you were talking about Pen then. I was like, what a weird way to talk about Pen and Colin, that random girl. But yeah, she clearly knows the drop the glove trick.
And inside the ballroom, we find the Featheringtons also arriving. Portia is pleased that the Ton will now be talking about Colin and the balloon, not Colin and Pen, which thrills Penelope. We absolutely have to give a shout out to Polly Walker here, who has an incredible moment with a lantern, where, of course, she is given a chance to look at the new invention and just hilariously says, with the biggest smile on her face, "No."
I'm so glad she's back for season 4.
Yeah.
Love it.
And I do love that the set is decorated with all the little weird quirky inventions. It's so fun. But lanterns aside, how is Pen looking, veg?
Well, a lady in silver. So Pen has opted for a sort of silvery blue dress with lots of silver sparkles and embroidery. She has long mesh gloves and lovely hair accessories, which are kind of mechanical looking flowers, which does fit the theme well. Plus, as hairstylist Farida Guedar said, she also has hairpins made from the very same beads on the sleeves of her dress, so lots of lovely cohesion. And makeup artist Jessie Diol said that for this look, she wanted to be innovative with the makeup, with a metallic eyeshadow and crystals to catch the light while she dances. Any man dancing with her would be drawn to look into her eyes. After all, she is looking for a husband. Very adorable.
I love that. And it works really well at the end when you have the extreme close-up on Pen's eyes and her lips.
Yeah. And Pen wanders off. But before we follow her, let's just check in with Cressida, who is being pressured by her mama to dance with Lord Debling. And I'd like to give a special shout out to Cressida's golden outfit because it has lovely billowy sleeves, perfect for the occasion. When it popped up, I thought this was the dress that they said, when it comes, you'll know it.
Yeah, you'll know it.
But it got even better.
Yeah, we saw those sleeves coming, didn't we?
Yeah, and I also love the little waistcoaty corset thing for her neck.
Yeah, like the high collar.
Which is super eccentric, but I just love it. And it might not be very period accurate. But do you know what? Maybe they should have been wearing that stuff back then.
Leading the way.
And she also gives us the clearest view of the dance cards for the evening, which have been illustrated with a lovely assortment of balloons. What I would do to get my hands on one of those little dance cards.
Don't even start. That's the true gem, isn't it? Yeah. But which ball would you want? Which dance card would
This
you want?
one. I want this one with the balloons.
You want the innovations?
I think I would choose this one too.
Or I guess
Full moon ball.
The full moon one is sweet. Would I want Vauxhall?
Vauxhall. I might go Vauxhall.
Or the Dankworth Finch ball.
Vauxhall would be cute.
Yeah. But yeah, love the detail. And in fact, if you look at everyone's costuming in the ball, you will see how the theme was really taken taken to heart and taken over to the modistes. Jen really had a lovely creative outlet for this ball.
As Colin enters the ball, he's stopped on the stairs by flirty debutantes who praise him for his heroism, but hero Colin no longer wants to be the center of attention, which is interesting when contrasted with his behavior in 301, where he enjoyed flirting with young women, and at Austerley in 302, where he's open to being surrounded by women, but doesn't really seem interested in engaging back with them. And here he seems visibly bothered by the attention he's receiving, thoughts only on Penelope.
And where is our dearest Penelope?
In the middle of the ballroom, looking a little despondent right until she spots Debling and makes a move for him. Unfortunately, Cressida has also spotted Debling, and even more unfortunately for Pen, Cressida has much longer legs, meaning she reaches her target before poor Penelope can. Just also a quick aside about the props in the scene. If you notice in the background, some of the debutantes have gear fans kind of tying into the theme of the Innovations Ball, which is really clever.
That's so cool.
I also find it really funny that we find Debling at this ball at a table covered in not just pastries, but fruit and vegetables. Debling in particular is standing right in front of a plate of artichokes, and I like the idea that maybe the Hawkinses realized he was coming and were just like, oh, just chuck some artichokes on here for him. And Pen has to abort her mission and watch as Cressida flirts away with Debling. Better luck next time, Pen, or not, seen as though this is a Polin podcast.
But now, dear listeners, we haven't had time to mention any of this, as we said, because this is a Polin rewatch. You've seen it before, you know what goes on. Lord Somodani, Francesca, the Queen trying to hook them up. All good.
Yeah.
Lord Somodani mentions that he wants like 29 kids or something.
Yeah.
Fran is like...
runs for the hills.
Is like, you carry them then.
Fran can literally feel her vagina tearing.
It might not be going well for Fran, though, as she makes a dash for freedom. But Violet is having a great time as Lord Marcus Anderson pops back up and makes his own move on the matriarch. Much is bound tonight, kids. Or maybe not, as Lady D arrives and breaks the news that Marcus is her brother. Dun, dun, dun.
And as we touched on earlier, Violet stumbles over her name when introducing herself to Marcus, which we later realize in part 2 is a sign that love is on the horizon.
This is a horrible transition because that's about Michaela and Fran. But until that point, while the heart still beats in our darling John. Welcome to What a Fran podcast, brought to you by 4 Frans who wouldn't be Frans without Fran. So Fran steps outside. The night is quiet. She just really needs to not hear someone's fucking voice for 5 seconds. I get you, Fran. I know how it is. The silence, the flames. And then John appears. I remember when we were watching this and it was perfectly set up. And we were like, he's coming. Because it wasn't announced that John was going to be in the show, but we knew he was going to be in the show. We knew.
Yeah.
And I just remember how much we lost our minds when it happened. I couldn't imagine a more perfect meet cute for these two.
It's beautiful, yeah.
And we'll talk about the Fran relationship as we go, but this is just, I love it so much.
It's so moving. This scene moved me to tears.
Just when John says, perhaps we might enjoy the silence together, and she smiles at him and he smiles at her and they just stand together in complete silence.
Yeah.
That's my Fran.
Yeah, we've mentioned before that we're really impressed with the sound and Foley work this season, especially in some of the early Fran scenes. For example, during their first meeting here, all sound seems to really fade away as they have this quiet moment together. And in that near silence, you can hear when the characters even like just shift or adjust slightly, the sound of the gravel quietly scraping under their shoes. It's just so well done. And fun fact, in the original script, Fran hears Somodani looking for her, and then she also sees him. And that is the reason she's broken out of the spell that she and John found themselves under. And that's why she left originally in the scene.
I like this better, that they just have this moment together. Just this little world.
Yeah, same.
And as Benedict allows himself to be led around the dance floor by Lady Tilly, Will learns that he's been misled in thinking he could have a place in society while also running his business. Interesting. But we've got a busy night ahead of us, so Will, you're going to have to deal with this one on your own, my love, because we find ourselves back at the Innovations Ball where Colin is going to inadvertently give Penelope the push she needs to pursue Debling. Now, I'm always on Colin's side. I'm on Colin's side always, but this is a little bit of karma coming back to bite him, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of a reversal of the end of the What a Barb scene in season 1, where Pen accidentally gives Colin the push he needs to approach a rival love interest, but here we see the opposite.
Innovate yourself out of this one, Colin.
Having a difficult day, my love. Yes, so Penelope catches sight of Colin across the ballroom, where he is still surrounded by young ladies who are fawning over his heroism. And if you're in Pen's perspective, this looks and is framed very similarly to the Rake Colin in 301. At the Livingston Gardens, it's kind of the same setup where he's been surrounded and she has no idea how far he's fallen from that and how far he's fallen for her.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of her, you've got Cressida and Debling. She's kind of torn between her past and her future almost. And as the script describes, we are left with a defeated Penelope who has retreated to the wall, fearing she can't compete. It's at this moment that Pen is drawn back to Colin and overhears a lady say, "Mr. Bridgerton, wherever did you find such courage?" Which is the one thing that poor Pen is lacking in this moment.
It's then that Colin catches sight of Penelope. Colin stutters when he sees Pen, and they lock eyes and all other sound fades. Their gaze is charged and heavy, but with a crowd caught between them, Colin can only stare. Colin finds his words, saying, "Courage is within us all. As long as we are honest with ourselves about our feelings, it is possible to do anything."
And it's during this scene that a heartbeat kicks in as we zoom in to Pen and Colin caught in this joint moment together. Guys, whose heartbeat do you think it is in that moment?
It does say in the script as Colin's heart sinks before he excuses himself from the lady, so I kind of think maybe it's his.
Well, we heard a heartbeat, not like a heart splashing.
No.
So it still could be either.
I think it's his heartbeat because I feel like this is the moment we've been building to all episode. He's found the resolve to tell her how he feels. He's almost there. Whereas later in the season, in 305, we see a similarly charged moment, but the heartbeat seems like it's capturing Pen's perspective.
Yeah, so we have Penelope's heartbeat in 305 when she's super, super stressed.
Right. Yeah, and so I think this is Colin's heartbeat moment.
And as the script itself points out, we can tell that Colin is talking about himself in this moment when he's talking about courage. He spent the whole episode trying to find his own courage and try to find his own words. He almost rouses enough courage in himself to move over to her, but then tragically, Pen takes his advice and she uses it to pursue Debling. She's a good student after all. You really did set yourself up for this one. Colin's really taken a battering and it's not laying up anytime soon. So we go over to Pebbling, and as Pen approaches him and confesses to Debling she hasn't been honest, she breaks the news that devastatingly she doesn't love grass. Don't let Colin know. Although I bet when he was writing her his little letters about that blade of grass, I bet she was like, "Oh, grass is the best thing ever. Couldn't love grass more if I tried." I know what she's like.
So Pen no longer wants to pretend to be someone she is not, to which Debling astutely observes, "How many yous are there exactly, and where do you hide them all?"
Oh, he's got it down.
But Debling is not put off by Penelope's confession, and indeed wishes to be with someone who does have their own interests. More on that next episode. But much to Pen's delight and our despair, Pebbling patch things back up, and they sip lemonade together.
Poor Cressida, knowing her bleak fate if she can't get Debling, is also watching on in despair, with not even Eloise able to cheer her up. And you know someone else who's also feeling despair and just this whole little grim scene of misery? Our lovely Colin. Violet approaches her thirdborn, but there is something on Colin's mind as he asks his mother, as you consider suitable matches for Francesca, what do you hope she finds? Violet says, for a start, Colin, you're pretty obvious, my darling, but she also says that she wants her children to have what she had, passion and excitement.
Colin is feeling a little confused as he replies, "I thought you believed the best foundation for great love was friendship." It is at this point that we need to publish an official apology to Colin, maybe Christopher Bridgerton, because we had long blasted him for not paying attention, we thought, during a similar scene, all the way back in season 1.
Look, Colin, we dragged you. We've dragged you for many things over the years, as we've dragged Pen. But if you remember in 103, there was that famous scene where Violet was speaking to Daphne and saying,
"You must simply marry the man who feels like your dearest friend."
Oh, is that it, Mamma? Well, how very simple indeed.
Yes, quite.
And we thought Colin wasn't listening, and we've made reels about this.
Yep.
We've brought it up at every possible opportunity. Turns out he was listening all along.
Yep.
He was writing it down in his little notebook, so apologies to you there.
Yeah, because if you go back and watch the scene, it looks like he's paying attention to Hyacinth and Gregory who are playing on the floor and not paying any attention to his mother whatsoever, but apparently he was listening, so thank you, Colin.
Well done, Colin.
Yeah.
And Violman fans, this is our time to rejoice as Violet finally draws direct parallels between Violman and Polin, noting that friendship is how the OG Bridgerton love story began. She points out, pretty unhelpfully, that it's rare to begin as friends and for both to reciprocate and feel more. Remember, It's this idea of reciprocity that has plagued Colin all episode and will continue to plague him next episode. So Colin tries to solve the mystery. How did Violmond know it was reciprocated between the two of them? And apparently, it's a simple answer. Edmund just gathered the courage to ask, which perfectly sets Colin up in this moment because we've just seen Colin independently talk about courage. And then Violet swoops in and is like, this is what your dad did. He'd be like, so proud of you. Go and do the same and you'd have what we had, although maybe with less bee stings. And this gives him the strength to go and do it right this second.
Yeah.
It's all looking so hopeful, and he turns to stare at Pen incredibly unsubtly once again, and somehow Violet manages to piece together these really obscure context clues, this impenetrable mystery, to piece it together and realise that possibly, just possibly, Colin might be talking about Penelope. We had a lot of questions from our listeners about Violet's conversation with Colin. So Murphman's mama said, during the Innovations Ball, Violet seemed pleasantly surprised by Colin's love for Pen. Do you think Violet knew that Pen had been in love with Colin? We were also asked by Victoria, do you think the first time Violet had an idea of Colin and Pen together was when she had the conversation with Colin at the Innovations Ball, or did she have an awareness beforehand that was something there? She looks very pleased with the idea, but is she pleased because she's secretly hoping for it already, or is she just pleased because she thinks they're a good match and in the moment she's like, I see this?
Well, for those curious about Violet's thoughts in this scene, she seems surprised to learn of Colin's interest in Pen because in the script it states that Violet follows Colin's eyes across the way to Penelope and Debling. The faintest trace of surprise settles on her face, but she tamps it down, seeing Colin is tortured. And then after Colin says he hopes Francesca is brave enough, if she ever finds love, to gather the courage to ask whether her feelings are reciprocated, Violet smiles knowingly as Colin's eyes turn back to Pen.
So do you think she always knew, or is this a revelation to her?
I feel like this moment is a revelation to her, but maybe that she secretly noted that they would be a good match, but maybe didn't ever really necessarily expect it or hope for it. You know what I mean? But this is a moment of surprise, as the script says.
We were also asked by a listener, Scribble Vinyl. Violet really pushed Anthony towards finding a match last year, but she's never really done that as much with Colin and Benedict. I think it's as well a lot to do with Colin's much, much younger. Yeah. And then also he had the whole thing with Marina, and she's like, let's just take a step back.
Yeah.
But if I had to guess, because it's not made explicitly clear, I think she probably knew that Pen had like a soft spot for Colin. And now that she sees this, it's like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
But she'd never really like been down that pathway before like she was in the books. And as Debling leaves Penelope's side, the score kicks in and we can feel Colin's courage, despite his own doubts and fears, beginning to build along with the music. I like to imagine that there's a little bee buzzing around the set decor as the spirit of Edmund descends upon his thirdborn. This is the moment, the crescendo of the episode. We know what's going to happen. Colin, suddenly emboldened by his dead dad that's timidly buzzing around the ballroom somewhere,
evading those gear fans. In fact, those gear fans are actually great for this ball because he can fly through the little gears without getting like hurt.
It's like little honeycomb, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's there in spirit, bless him. So Colin makes his way straight to Penelope in the middle of the ballroom as Violet watches on. A cool little fact is that Ruth Gemmell made sure she was positioned in the frame for this moment and for the dance. And you can see how Violet is beaming as she watches Colin. And then what's really darkly funny is when Debling and Pen are dancing, she just has the grumpiest face on. She's like, oh no, I was just fucking planning the wedding bouquets and now look what's happened.
Yeah.
And it's all going so well until Penelope begins to speak using those bloody lips that have haunted him all season. Honestly, it was going fine. And then
she started talking.
Yeah, gone. She says, finally free from your admirers. And unfortunately for Colin, speech is a little beyond him now, forcing Penelope to ask, are you well? Because he looks like he's about to have a synaptic breakdown. Colin just about manages to say, there is a question I've been needing to ask you before those pesky little lips get the best of him once again.
After Colin says that there is a question he's been needing to ask her, the script says, Pen's breath catches, her longing for Colin resurfacing, a part of her hoping against all reason that Colin might be wanting to ask her something romantic. It's a crazy thought, but it's also crazy the way he's looking at her, crazy how close they are, how their breath is nearly intermingling, and so she can't help but nurture the slightest bit of hope, especially as she notices him looking at her lips. In the script, it's not Debling's arrival then that silences Colin, but the sight of the Lord Squad and various debutantes gossiping, which allows doubt to creep in.
Yeah, I think that had that been kept in, this would be too reminiscent of the events of 208.
I agree.
Where it's the question of, are you embarrassed by her? And then also tying into 301 as well, where Penn thinks that. And it may have come across that he was, if not embarrassed, then at least very aware of being perceived with her, which we know isn't the case. That's just not where he's mentally at.
Yeah.
So instead, we just have Debling interrupt the moment. And I think this works far better because the entire focus, especially with those extreme close-up, becomes just the two of them. And it's her eyes and her lips. And just a very broken man. I love it. I love that Penn...
I also enjoy broken Colin.
It would be easy for Penn to like reject the notion altogether, but like she knows him so well and she like recognizes that something's up with him and she allows herself to believe it, which I think sets it up for why in the carriage she is more accepting of his confession because she, although she's had a lot of evidence to say that they'll never be together.
Yeah.
She still knows him more than anyone and she trusts him and believes him.
And like you said, in this sweet tent, she wasn't really paying attention to the way he was looking at her. But in this moment, there's no escaping the way he's looking at her. And she's kind of forced to realize that there may be a mutual attraction between them.
We will see. And we had a few questions about this as well, with Gabby asking, I always wonder what Penn is thinking when Colin approaches her at the Innovations Ball. And I think that kind of covers it. She's like, there's something drastically wrong with you.
Yeah.
Do you need some lemonade?
What the fuck is wrong with you?
Is he unwell?
It's like love or scarlet fever.
Yeah.
It's like the only two possibilities that are on the radar here.
Yeah.
And we had a few people also ask us, what question was he going to ask at the Innovations Ball? Was he going to ask her then and there if she loved him? If they wanted to be more friends?
I don't think he was going to ask if she loved him. I think he would have asked if she felt more than friendship for him.
Yeah. Yeah, he was stumbling away. Because it is this reciprocity that he's been struggling with so much. But I think what he struggled with in this episode, he's paralysed by not quite being able to put it into words, how he feels and what he needs to ask her. I think he'd have just gone up there and been like, that kiss.
Yeah, yeah. It might have all come back to the kiss.
Yeah.
He might have just wanted to ask her what his dream self did, basically, at the beginning of the episode. He basically wants Penelope to say that he also occupies her every thought, you know?
Yeah, that's it.
That's all he wants to know. He doesn't want to know necessarily that she loves him.
Like, is it love? Is it marriage? Things like that.
Yeah, he wants to know if the feelings are reciprocated, as we discussed.
He wants to be like, has your world also been
upended,
completely changed the way it has been for me? Also, what are your dreams looking like? Because I'm having some wild times in mine. Oh, I love it. It's perfect. It's perfect.
And when Debling tries to take her to the dance floor, Penelope hesitates. In the script, it says that Penelope glances at Colin, wishing she could have one more moment to see what he might say. But while Colin wants more than anything to finally tell Penn how he feels, he's just not brave enough to do it. And so, tired of waiting for Colin, Penelope turns to Debling, plastering on a smile, making a choice.
Wrong choice, babe. No. I mean, I get it. It's been a while, but...
Yeah. Yeah. And the scene tragically ends with Colin's heart breaking as he watches Penelope walk off, unable to look away as Penn dances with Debling, knowing he's missed his chance.
And the two of them dance to Happy Than Ever. Now, I remember I wanted Happy Than Ever for ages.
Yeah.
And then it happened here and I was like, oh, I didn't want it like that.
Not like this.
Yeah. I wanted it in like 301, like if they'd had like a really like bad dance together where she was like, get out of my life.
Yeah.
But I mean, they originally were going to use Happy Than Ever or the rehearse for that for the 304 dance. And I'm glad that they switched it. I think it works better here. And I have to say, there's something morbidly funny. I mean, we're not laughing at him, but it is just bleak when he's just standing on a completely different side to everyone else. It just like stood still, just staring straight at them.
Yeah.
And then you have Violet's face just livid.
Yeah.
We did have a couple of questions about this ending as well, because it's such a memorable ending for the episode. And one of our listeners, Nick, had a question about the way it ends. So not necessarily what happens, but the kind of moment we cut at. So she says that she found it hard on the initial viewing because of the ending. There seemed to be this momentum building during the Innovations Ball. Colin mooning over Penn, watching her every move, really building himself up to talk to her, and then having to watch from the sidelines as she danced with Debling. His look of heartbreak and suffering was devastating. But then I feel like the episode ended really abruptly and it left me wanting more. I would have liked that last shot to linger more on Colin having to endure them. I mean, we had to watch Penn watch him from the sidelines for 2 seasons. It would have been interesting if he'd been so anguished he couldn't watch anymore and turned and left. Did you like the ending? What do you guys think?
I did like the ending. I like how they kind of subverted our expectations of him confessing his feelings and how the moment was basically stolen from him because he's not ready to voice those feelings. And Deblane, the rebel love interest, is ready to make his move when he wasn't.
Yeah.
And it kind of like propels us into the next episode, building up to the carriage scene where we have that other explosive moment where they don't kind of shy away from their feelings for each other anymore.
You have to have this moment of frustration.
Yeah.
Would it have been funny had he been like, I need to ask you something? And she'd be like, first of all, I'm leaving.
Leaving for India. Sorry.
Penn has, I get it, Penn has been through the ringer with it. I think, and also we have to give a shout out to that last look from Luke Newton where he has tears in his eyes, the archway behind him just completely fractured by thinking he is too late.
Yeah, I really like it. I really like kind of how it ends on him. I know that he could have turned around, but I like how it sort of finishes on him looking pained, as the last episode finished on him looking kind of confused and something dawning on him.
Yeah.
And the first episode ended on Penn, like before Colin had sort of realised his feelings, it was all about Penn.
Yeah.
So just nice little progression, I think.
Oh, that is cute. Yeah.
And then episode 4 back to Penn.
Yeah.
Looking confused again.
Yeah.
We need like a compilation of like all the ending shots of how like just perplexed they look at different points in the story. I do know what Nick means here. I think maybe had it just been like a couple of beats a little bit longer. However, I think if you compare this to the ending of 103, Art of the Swoon, it's almost exactly the same in terms of like the overall story where you have Simon having to watch Daphne dance with the prince. And what Simon does is he does turn and he walks out. And I think that that walking out is an action that expels some of the built up tension that you have in the scene. So I feel like you have like a... instead of what happens here where it builds and builds and builds and builds and Colin can't speak and then it just... But so I was thinking a lot about this because I do like that sort of exhale that you get with Simon storming out, whereas Colin just stays and watches. But I think it's interesting for his character because, as we said, the issue of reciprocity for Colin is really hanging heavy over him and it stops him being able to act and also keeps getting distracted by her lips. But when you think about the characterization of Colin in this moment versus Lecky, what you were saying about Colin in 304, here you have a man who is completely paralyzed, whereas in 304 he is a man of action. He can't contain it anymore and he has to put it all out. So I think it's an important contrast that we have to feel really frustrated by this ending of 303 to have that relief in 304 where he is not paralyzed and he does interrupt the dance. Like we have like that full circle moment and then he does chase after Penn and he tells her everything which he couldn't tell her in 303, so it bursts out of him. So I think in the moment it's quite a frustrating ending and then we get the benefit of that next episode.
Yeah, I agree.
And you know what? A tormented Colin crying over Penn dancing with another man is where we leave the episode.
Kind of what we were hoping and wishing for.
It was on the wish list.
Yep.
And it's not because we like to see Colin suffer. It's just because he's really good at these moments.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's just really great.
And I just want to turn to Whistledown's voiceover at the end of the episode. We've said before how the episodes in season 3 are very thematically driven. You have the idea of change in 301, light and revelation in 302. And in this episode, it is all about those forces of nature, natural and internal, that drive and shape our worlds. It's something we see over and over in this episode. Of course, you have the more overt references, the wind that caused the balloon to break free and forced an instinctive and revelatory reaction out of everyone involved. Colin to rescue Penelope to risk death by lusting after Colin's arms, etc. Wind is also the same force that caused Polin's meet cute all those years ago. You then have Deblane, a lover of the natural world, and, in Lady Whistledown's estimations, a man driven by his instinct, an instinct which leads him to Penelope. And death in the Arctic, apparently. But it's really Colin who is shaped by the forces of nature in this episode, his own and those around him. You have the heightened romance of his dream, which Andrew On described, representative of Colin unleashing that force of nature inside you, this beast. Colin's subconscious takes over and shows the truth of what Colin truly desires. It's an unrestrained, liberated moment, free from societal boundaries and unknown factors like Penn's own feelings. Then you have the willow scene, where all those unknowns come rushing back, and the two stealing a moment under the willow tree 3 are clearly warring against their own true feelings for each other. Andrew Ahn was really inspired by the themes found in the script, saying of the balloon sequence that, "I love what it says about forces of nature, what we can't control, that's out of our hands in some ways, how we feel. It's showing you the instincts, the feelings, the heart, the guts that each of these characters have. I think that's ultimately captured in this ending scene with Colin. He's fighting against what he can't control, his own feelings, the uncertainty of Penelope's feelings, and the expectations of society versus his true nature. We see how Colin's innate animal nature has been triggered by his kiss with Penelope, but he is still caught up in a battle with himself to find the courage to fight for her, overcome his own insecurities, and ask how she feels. As Whistledown notes, for in the battle between man and nature, it is quite clear that the battle is, in fact, between man and himself. The story is not about Colin versus Dabbling, but Colin warring with himself to follow his instincts when it comes to Pen. He's the only person really standing in his way. Similarly, Pen has been fighting her own battle this episode to move on from Colin, and she is also forced into a decision to continue holding on to the flame for Colin, resurrecting her dead dream of being with him, or to force herself to move on. In the moment, she barrels past her emotions and chooses Dabbling, leaving both Colin and Penelope hurtling towards the next episode.
And that's our whole episode. So what do we think of the overall episode?
I really enjoy this episode.
Yeah.
I have some mild criticisms about, the way the whole balloon debacle was handled, but generally I really enjoyed this episode.
And I was a bit of a naysayer of episode 3 for a long time. And I've come around to it so much. I think it's just a lot of fun. I mean, Colin's obviously suffering, but I feel like the kind of torment that you have, it's really beautiful. And knowing how it comes from episode 2 and goes into episode 4, I think it connects them really, really well. And so a lot that frustrates this episode, you really feel the benefit of next episode. And we love Colin and spending time with him in this moment of like realization, but not being able to put it into words.
Yeah.
Which we've seen from Pen for 2 seasons. It's just a whole insight into his world, and Pen feels a little bit more distant from us.
Yeah.
Which I really like.
And I'd much rather watch this, as in I have watched this more times than I've watched bloody 07.
Yeah, like that kind of pain in 307, 308.
It's just all light and fluffy.
Yeah.
It's a nice one to put on while you're getting dinner ready.
Yeah, I feel like my only other criticism of this episode, and maybe in part 1 in general, was if the season were longer, because I don't really think they had time for it, I would have liked to have seen the lessons continue and a little more chaos Colin once he realizes that he has feelings for her, and maybe even gets an inkling that those feelings are reciprocated. Maybe a little bit more of a chase, a pursuit from him would have been fun. But in general, I really love part 1 and I love this episode. So,
and it's a very internalized episode. We spend a lot of time literally in his thoughts and his dreams in his mind, even though he had these huge set pieces. And one of our listeners, Murphyman's Mama, asked about the reciprocity and if we liked that this became Colin's big obstacle on his way to pursuing Pen, and if there was a different question that we would have liked to have seen Colin wrestle with. And I think what I like about this episode and Colin's story as a whole in season 3 is that it's never a question of if he loves Penelope like it is in the books, because in the books he's like, what is this feeling so sudden and new?
Jonathan
But also, do I want this feeling so sudden and new? And it's like, yes you do, stop it. Like when he's literally on her on the sofa and you're like, can we get off her if we're in 2 minds about this, Colin, please?
if we're not sure, yeah.
And that's fair enough, but Colin had the space and distance to wonder that, but we needed show Colin to know and be certain of how he felt, and the show delivered on that. I think he slips a lot throughout episode 2, and then he's gone by the end of episode 2. So episode 3 is never about him being like, is this love? Do I want to be in love? What does this mean if I am in love? It's just him trying to put that into words and just desperately wanting to know, does she feel the same? Has it changed her as much as it has me?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really beautiful, really nuanced question to grapple with, and I think it's done really well. But there we go. Lecky, can you take us through the whistle ups and the whistle downs of the episode? A lot happened, I think it's because we recorded this over like 3 months because we just couldn't get around to finishing it.
Ill, sick, concussed. Our whistle up for this episode is the dream kiss, which is perfect with or without the cut dialogue, in my opinion. And the whistle down, I don't know, the balloon sequence didn't quite reach the heights we hoped it would.
Well, can we have a little bow rating for episode 3? It's just a great time. It just feels like a real like Bridgerton episode,
I'm gonna go with a 3.
Yeah, same. 3 for 3.
3 for 3 from 3 of us.
Yeah.
Beans, we'll just assume you agreed with us.
We'll assume you're a 3.
I had a great time with this rewatch. I loved it a lot more than I did originally, and a great time was had. So next rewatch, I don't know when it'll be, but when we are doing our next rewatch, the part 1 finale.
Old friends.
Yeah.
Can you believe we're there? Old Friends is coming up.
Yeah.
And that is a bloody great episode, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Well, until we reach that hallowed point, Lecky, where can everyone find us?
You can find us at WhatABarbPod on Instagram and TikTok.
And you can fulfill your audio needs by following us on all of your favourite podcast platforms. And for a true audio-visual experience with beautiful collages and context pictures, please find us on youtube.com/WhatABarbPod. I don't know, something like that. It's been a while.
I assume so. I don't know.
Linked in the show notes.
He'll be there. And if you would like to support the pod, you can join us over on Patreon, where we have outfit games, we have discussion posts, we have little retrospective insights into our first reactions for all these episodes and more. And you can find us at patreon.com/whatabarbpod. But I really just want to take this moment to we've had our excitements, we've had our ups and downs, but really this is an episode of mourning. This is an episode of letting go. Although maybe not of the rope, actually, Colin, ignore that advice. It's difficult. We lose people along the way. We can't carry everyone with us into our futures. And so this is a moment where I just collectively, sorry, it's quite difficult, just want to say, Pirate Colin, your coat, you can't come with us into the future episodes, but we love you and we miss you and we hope you're safe wherever you are, whoever's stolen you. And so Beans, wherever you are, can you do us the honour and say farewell to our dearest friend, the pirate coat? Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
There once was a lad with a bonny brown coat, so fine that the pirates turned green in their boats. Goodbye, fare ye well. Goodbye, fare ye well. Oh, heave with a will, lords, oh, heave long and strong. Where has the pirate coat gone? Our anchor will weigh, our balloons we will set. The coat we are leaving we'll never forget. Goodbye, fare ye well. Goodbye, fare ye well. Das violin. Do 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 do. Do 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 do.
A Polin podcast.
Where the hell is the coat? Answer me that.